He's lining it up. 5 seconds left. NIU up 16-14. 62-yarder. Snap, hold, Jeter's kick. It's blocked! It's blocked! It's blocked! Picked up by NIU! Picked up by NIU! The Huskies have done it! The Huskies with the biggest upset in NIU history! They come to South Bend, Indiana, and they knock off the number 5 team in the country. NIU 16, Notre Dame 14. The football gods were shining down on NIU.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Nico is going to waltz into the end zone. Touchdown, Tennessee, 31 yards.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Pitch to Gordon, running left to the 10, Gordon to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown, Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
7 yards deep, lets it go to the sideline, pick six! Tommy Hill, the short run to the house.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
This will be a 54-yard field goal attempt to give them the lead and probably the win. Conradi, kick on the way, and he got it.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
if you only were a Nebraska fan, you would realize that it's been a while since they had a win like that, even though Colorado, we don't know what their record's going to be, if they're going to end up with 6-7 more wins or a bowl team. But that was something special. And I still couldn't, because of their history, really enjoy it until the very, very end. And Paul knows the rules. He sent me a text pretty much afterwards about the game, because it's been such a mess in the last decade. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. We're on set today. We take you, as we always are, up until 6 o'clock, and a lot to get to. I did not put the Nebraska helmet on the chair, on the desk. I did not do that. That was your decision. Okay.
That was me. Look, Smokey, you've been walking through the desert for a while, and by no means should you consider this an oasis, but at least it's not a mirage.
Well,
like it was a resounding win. It was a physical win. It was everything you want to see from a Nebraska team. They looked, especially defensively to me, how I remember Nebraska looking, where they hit you and made you like it. Number 9, maybe my favorite player in the country right now, their big defensive tackle. He's just a monster. I enjoyed watching that game thoroughly. Nebraska's on the way up, and Colorado hasn't fixed anything that was wrong with them last year.
Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome win for Nebraska. It's been a long time coming. You could see that it's in the reaction of the fans and the amount of excitement in that stadium, the importance that you could sense as that game kicked off and in the build-up to it. That meant a lot. That meant a lot to beat Colorado and have their fans pack out for what feels like maybe a renaissance of Nebraska football. Long way to go. They didn't beat a great team necessarily on Saturday, but it was an important win nonetheless. Had lost 3 to Colorado in that 4-game series, so got a win before that thing finished. And I don't know when they'll play again, but that had to feel pretty good to not get swept, but also to have a showing like that on national television and to start off 2-0 and to beat a team that, runs their mouth a little bit and is probably the most hated team in the country at the moment, most disliked team in the country at the moment. And you didn't like the way they kind of treated you last year. And there's just a lot of stuff swirling in the air. And Nebraska had the big moment in front of them, and they took hold of it and grabbed it by the steering wheel and rode that bad boy into a great victory on Saturday night. So, that was awesome. Congrats to you and all the rest of the Nebraska fans. I think it opens up or just confirms a lot of questions about Colorado and just what that whole situation is and what that's going to look like moving forward. But a nice slice of humble pie in some ways, and we'll see what Matt Rhule and company can, do with this. But I am not surprised that he's got them chugging on along, and I'm not surprised they won that game on Saturday. That always kind of felt like just the feeling going into this one, that would be the end result. But I think how one-sided it was in the first half was really impressive.
Yeah, they did. The first half looked like a team. They got to learn how to play longer than that because it got ugly. But I did not put the helmet on the desk, but I appreciate Paul for doing that. And I rarely ever will wear a logo shirt. I'm not one of those guys because for the longest time I was used to them winning. And then of course there's the abyss. And so it's kind of impressive. I was thrilled and so happy for Matt Rhule and the team, but a lot more to get to. That was one game. The most impressive win, in my opinion, no question, was Texas. We kind of thought that they might be able to hammer Michigan, and they absolutely did. The most shocking win was Northern Illinois and Notre Dame. And then there were some adventurous games too. And let's get to that. Here's the top 25 poll that was released. And I don't think there's anything that's much of a surprise. A couple of teams have entered the poll. I think there is a chance, and this is without getting in over my skis. Georgia plays in Austin later this season, might play them in the SEC championship game, and hell, they might meet somewhere in the semis or who knows for the championship. And that's not to forget about everybody else, but those two, Georgia coasted, they were supposed to, but they were so good against Clemson. That's the top 25 poll. Big 12 with Utah, dropped a spot despite a win. Oklahoma State loses their best defensive player, maybe in Colin Oliver, at 13. Then you see Kansas State. They're playing Arizona. Arizona's 20th. And then you have Iowa State with a great win. And that might have been the most satisfying win for anybody against Iowa on the long field goal. So there you have the top 25.
Well, Georgia in that top 5 plays everybody in the top 5 except for Ohio State.
That's right.
So they play Alabama in a couple weeks on the road. They play Ole Miss also on the road, and they play Texas on the road. So, look, if they go through all those 3, and there's not a whole lot of reason to think, not to mention they also play Tennessee at home the week after they play Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So Georgia's schedule, nobody's, like crying tears for them like they are for, say, Oklahoma, who's got a really hard schedule, or Florida, who's also on that Georgia schedule. But
if you thought Oklahoma's schedule was hard,
I mean,
prior to what they did against Houston, it just went up another notch.
But nobody's crying tears for them. But
yeah,
this was not an easy schedule either. So
absolutely.
But but it's Georgia, so nobody cares.
Well, Georgia, Texas will be a mega showdown when that time comes. But the thing that jumps out to me is 6 of the top 7 are from the SEC.
Yeah,
I don't want to do the conference pride thing over every little metric because that's now what everybody does. But, I mean, it's hard not to notice, right? I mean, it's impossible not to notice, especially when that's kind of an historic thing. And I don't know if Ohio State slips up. It's a very real possibility you could have the entire top 5. I mean, the odds of that are unlikely, but it's within play, and that's not something that's ever typically within play historically, is to have 6 of the top 7 or, nearly the entire top 5. So that'll separate somewhat. But when you have the bigger conferences, not really, because they're not all going to play each other. And if Georgia, Texas play each other close, one of them's going to drop like a spot. So
maybe
that's a stranglehold on the top that will be interesting to see how much stronger that becomes or how it loosens it all. But that is definitely a unique metric from this week. And I think when it comes to 12 through 14, which is where you see that Big 12 log jam, that with the questions about Cam Rising now, and Oklahoma State's looked okay, but definitely has warts, and K-State has looked okay, but definitely has warts. It's kind of a log jam, but Arizona has won both games but has warts. Iowa State had the big win over the weekend, but I think that all those teams are close, and rightfully so, because that's kind of just the way the Big 12 looks like it's shaping up, as a handful of teams that will maybe just all be up on each other, or maybe somebody emerges out of that pack, but I don't think anybody is distinctly better than the other. But if I had to go with somebody at the top, it would still be Utah, even with the question about Rising. That is something to monitor, however. Nice for Nebraska to be in the poll after that win, but I know Matt Rhule has said something along the lines of like, that's not anything.
We have bigger plans.
Yeah, they have bigger plans. BC's in the poll. So Castellanos and company finding their way in there. That's good for them. And obviously Northern Illinois deserves to be rewarded as well. So yeah, it's still needing a lot of sorting out, but those are just a couple of things that jump out to me.
A couple of more things. By the way, 1971, it was 1, 2, and 3. Nebraska, Oklahoma, Colorado finished the year 1, 2, and 3 with Nebraska beating those two, Oklahoma beating Colorado. And so they finished 1, 2, and 3 from the same conference in 1971. It might have happened elsewhere, but we see a possibility of that this year.
You know what jumps out to me real quick is that right there in the middle of the poll is the Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Oklahoma, LSU are all right there together. And all of them this week had moments.
Yeah. Well, Utah, they were never sweating.
Well, yeah.
They dominated really that game. There was a couple of times, but they were the better team.
They have a dear God, what's going on moment with Cam Rising his fingers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to some of the injuries, some of the better performances, et cetera, in a moment. Texas mauled Michigan. It was never close. Shut up 110,000 people. We knew they were good. We didn't know quite how good because they lost a lot of people too, but they went into Ann Arbor. And this is something that for a long time, they could talk about culture. They didn't have it. They were I don't know if the word is entitled, spoiled, or they just felt like because they were in Austin, things were going to go their way. Not like they didn't have some nice wins along the way. But this is the message that Steve Sarkisian from day one tried to get and implement into the program. And this was his message after they beat Michigan on Saturday.
Listen, the reason I'm saying all this is, guys, we have a formula for success. And it doesn't matter what uniform they wear. It doesn't matter what helmet they wear. It doesn't matter where the arena is. If we prepare right and we go play our brand, our style of football, we're good. we're good, but we need to understand the mental intensity it takes when we get right back to work again next week. Okay, we got to go right back to work because this journey ain't over, man. It ain't even close to being over.
All right, so there's Steve Sarkisian. I reached out to Texas and said, hey, can we use that? And John Bianco said, yes, that came from @TexasFootball on Twitter. That's hard to say. I mean, it's hard no matter if you say it, you still got to be able to do it, and it didn't happen overnight.
The biggest thing that you have to get is you have to get your team to enjoy the grind to win this. And it sounds like Texas right now is enjoying that work and that they're looking forward to getting back to work. Not sitting on their laurels and saying, hey, we just went to the big house and won. Just like last year we went to Tuscaloosa and won, is to have them excited about getting ready to go back to work, to play this week against a team that not near as legendary as Michigan, that they're going to have to do that each and every week, and that they have those things ahead of them in the SEC where you're going to have to prepare like it's Michigan on the road every single week. You can't take a week off and hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, going to the big house and playing Michigan is slightly different than hosting UTSA after they've been blown out by Texas State. So, yeah, you've got to get into the minds of these players and let them know that what they're doing is really special and they've got a lot of upside, but that it's 2 weeks in and there's 10 games to go. And the plan is to have more than 10, but the degree to which they have more than 10 is going to depend on, the week to week and staying locked in. But if they do, then they are a really good football team, if not the best team in the country. I know Georgia has something to say about that, but it's week 2. So, until that time comes where we see them play on the field, which we will, there's going to be conversations, and I think it's very fair to have a conversation 2 weeks in about Texas being one of, if not the best teams in the country. They've earned that. They earned that on Saturday, and that was not the Michigan team from last year, clearly, but it was impressive nonetheless. The way they were able to waltz in there and just kind of dictate things and look like by far the better team throughout the afternoon. Quinn Ewers was excellent. He's got a flair for the big game. I know it's been kind of a talking point, but it's true. He just seems to have an extra layer to him when it comes to performing in big-time showdowns, and they're going to have a lot of those upcoming with the way they are situated and with the games on their schedule. So you got to be feeling great, but you also know there's a long way to go. So it shouldn't stop you from celebrating, but if you're these players, Sark's message rings true that you've got to stay locked in because you've got something really, really cool, but you've got to keep doing it week to week. And that's the grind. And that's what some teams can't do or what some teams do better than others. And that's how you win championships. So they're in that conversation, but they got to keep locked in.
Yep, they do. And they have UTSA. They're wounded after getting thumped by G.J. Kenny. Jeff Traylor even said, I can understand why people don't believe in us right now. They got hammered badly by Texas State first time that the Bobcats had beaten the Roadrunners. BU at 12 with Patrick. Utah dominated, ? I guess if you count a defensive. They dominated that game. Were there moments when Baylor could have done something to possibly make it tight, like 23-12 when they cut it, and then they give up what was it, Craig? You mentioned it in your article, a 70-some yard drive, took 8 minutes off the clock. I never once thought Baylor had a chance to win that game after the first 5 to 10 minutes. And a kick return or a block punt return counts. A strip sack that sets up a touchdown counts. Did Baylor end up, I thought it would be 31-14 or something like that. So the 23-12 looks okay, but I thought that Utah dominated that game.
I think it's just splitting hairs. I think, Utah dominated that game. That's not to say Baylor didn't play well in some areas or that they didn't have moments or that they didn't keep it close. But I think you factor in the Cam Rising injury and the fact he didn't play the entire second half. And when he went out, it was 20-3 or something along those lines that Baylor had gotten the field goal right before halftime. So they were able to finally get on the board, but their offense could do really much of nothing. They opened that up in the second half. Cam Rising doesn't play defense, so they did find a little something, but they're basically explosive player bust. That's what their offense is, and they had like 2 of them on Saturday that helped set up points. But beyond that, they scored 12 points. They scored 12 points. Utah didn't score in the second half, right? And Cam Rising didn't play in the second half, so I get where you're coming from, but I think you're kind of getting into a pointless argument because
it's not pointless.
No, I'm saying in general, the whole what's Patrick saying? It's okay, sure, but it was pretty one-sided. Like, if you don't want to call it a blowout, that's fine, but we're kind of arguing semantics here because that game was never really that close, and it looked like it could be close at the end, and then Utah ran like 8 minutes off the clock, so they never allowed it to get too close for comfort. But, yeah, I mean, it's not one of those that, like, you got devastated and, destroyed, but it was pretty one-sided. I don't know how you'd see it other than that.
DeQuan Finn could not have bribed the defense at a stretch to let him complete a pass. I mean, he was.
Well, he also couldn't complete it sometime on his own.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't just the protection. It was sometimes, hey, you've got to play, and you just airmailed it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he could have gone to all of them and been like, hey, I'm going to give you guys $50 a piece if you'll just let me complete one pass right now. And they'd be like, no, there's no money. Like, he was off really badly. They were wonky on offense, to say the least. I mean, they got a couple things going, but Cam Rising apparently isn't hurt too terribly bad, and Utah felt confident enough in its defense to just let him roll out in the second half in street clothes and chill out and not try to push it.
Yeah, so there we are. Utah wins. We're going to get to some of the other Big 12 games in a moment. I tell you what I want to do. I want to just give me the Thomas Hammock on the trying to still recruit. He's the Northern Illinois head coach. He's going to join us today at 4:00. We're still looking for a few pieces to finish this class: offensive line, defensive line, corner specialist, snapper, punter, kicker. Send your film. A great chance to take advantage of what Northern Illinois was able to do. Now, Garrett, go to the next two on Northern Illinois from Front Office Sports. The Irish paid them $1.4 million to play in South Bend. Now, that's usually the cost, $1 million to $1.8 million, $2 million for teams to come travel to play, so you get your 75 to 100,000 or even 50,000 fans. That's what you can do. Also, that's what happened in winning the game. Biggest upset for them, of course, in program history. Then John Fanta had this note, and then we talk about the game. From Fox Sports Research, MAC teams were 0-50 against top 5 teams in the AP since 1978. Now 1-50 with Northern Illinois making history in South Bend. As good as the nice win was in College Station, they turned around and blew a tire and lost. And Marcus Freeman, of course, and company, they have to be wondering what in the hell happened.
I'll tell you what happened. I don't know what Mike Denbrock's doing there. I mean, like, what's he calling? Like, that surprises me because he's one of the better offensive minds in the country, but he's not playing to the strengths of Riley Leonard right now in that offense. He's trying to do things that I just don't think are in their nature. And the other thing that happened is they clearly did not take, like, they looked at the spread of that game and they didn't take Northern Illinois as seriously as they did. Thomas Hammock, this is not, the first good thing that's happened. I mean, he was the MAC coach of the year just 3 years ago. He knows what he's doing. He had his guys prepared to go. And I think sometimes you're Notre Dame, you have to realize that, yeah, you are favored by 28 points, but this team coming in here, this is the biggest deal for them to come into South Bend and get to play here, a place that most of them would have never even called them to come and play there or take a visit. None of that stuff. So you're going to get people's best shot when you're Notre Dame. You need to know that they got it and they just were not ready for it.
Yeah, Adam Rittenberg had a really good article and all the connections to Indiana and all of that. And I know we're going to talk to Thomas Hammock, but his background and how it all played into Saturday and it's a pretty cool story. So if you haven't checked that out and you want more on that game, then Adam Rittenberg's got a nice write-up. But that was shocking in the best kind of ways. That's why you watch college football as much as everything starts to favor the favorites. So more and more every year with every rule that's passed or every law that's, changed or made, it seems to favor the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Texases more than it does the Northern Illinois. And yet here's a team making the most of their situation and going beating one of those teams that usually gets the favored status. And so that was a beautiful thing to see, unless you were a Notre Dame fan, obviously, or unless you were somebody who had money on the Irish. But I was certainly not expecting that result. And yet by the time it was all over, I don't think anybody was all that surprised because this is kind of the Marcus Freeman story at Notre Dame in so many ways. Yep. And that's unfortunate for him. But I know some people feel like he lost his job on Saturday. Barring a miracle national title run, that's the kind of loss that plants the seeds, or the losses he had previous that were similar to this are the types that plant the seeds that no matter how many times you win 10 games or go to a bowl game, you're Notre Dame and you shouldn't be losing to Northern Illinois. in any circumstances, much less the ones on Saturday. So that is something to monitor. But that was just great college football moments that we saw on Saturday from Northern Illinois. And that's why you watch the game and you love the game, at least for the most part, most people. And I was just, just excited for them and excited to see what comes from that game. But that was pretty cool.
I can't wait to talk to Coach Hammock. I reached out to his media relations director yesterday evening, followed up earlier this morning, and she said, oh, that's right. Hold on, we'll get back with you. And she said, how about 4:00? He'll join us at that time. Here's one stat. Max Olson had this one. Shedeur Sanders in that loss to Nebraska, and he was beaten and battered, pressured on 22 dropbacks, 5 of 5 passing, 5 of 15 for 45 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 sacks, 1.8 quarterback ranking. Nebraska rushed 3 or 4 on 19 of the 22 dropbacks, and they still were able to put pressure on him.
Yeah, they're off. The offensive line at Colorado is not good. And it's not only maybe a talent issue, it's very much a schematic issue. They do not get after people. They're on their heels automatically every time. The offense is not built around running the ball at all, so they have no run blocking chops to them. And Nebraska's got a defensive line that was good last year. It was good a year ago. Now that they have more confidence, they have confidence in their offense, they're playing with their ears back a lot more and not playing so cautious. Tony White's one of the best schematic defensive coordinators in the country, was Matt Rhule's best hire when he got there. And clearly that is the spirit of this team, runs through the defense, which is what Matt Rhule wants anyway. And they absolutely beat them up early and let Colorado know that finesse is not going to do it for you here. You're going to have to fight with us, and they could not stand toe-to-toe with them.
When Tommy Hill had that pick near the 5 or 10 yard line, I have not felt that kind of moment in 10 years where I squealed like a teenage girl who bumped into Taylor Swift. And that just set the tone after the pressures they had on her early. It wasn't great in the second half, but Craig, that defense did play well. And Shedeur, after the game, it was constantly about, he was talking about I didn't have time to throw it, how many times did Dylan Raiola get hit, et cetera. And then he left early in the game, like 2.5 minutes left in the game. I don't think that was a good look by any means.
Yeah, the coverage of Colorado is just so weird. It's like hard to know what to believe and what is people putting extra mustard on things or what is actually something that's pretty egregious. You know what I mean? Like, because there's definitely agendas when it comes to just Dion and it goes both ways. So I don't know, and the reason why I say that is like the Shedeur leaving at the end of the game. Like, was it concussion protocol? Because some people think that it was. Or was it Dion being full of crap because he's covering for his son because his son was a poor sport and left early? I'm inclined to believe, and I think most people believe it's the latter. I don't know for sure, and I know it's stupid and bad sports radio to just give the benefit of the doubt, but, you can see why those things add up over time. So I don't know. I don't believe just every little thing that comes out on Twitter, because Twitter is half full of crap. I mean, it truly is at this stage. So, initially I started seeing some of that stuff after the game, but the more and more you're reading up, like there's a story on I know
where you're going.
The Nebraska radio station website had the story about the music playing for Shedeur.
That's false.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
False.
That's going around. There's major.
Yeah, well, when he scores, they don't play the school song.
Before I got here, there's a major podcaster who does college football with 100,000 followers and probably millions of listens, and he's reporting on that. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a bullshit story that is being thrown around by the major college football personalities and treated as fact, but it's not true. So that's what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm inclined to say did Shedeur have a head injury? And no, I don't believe that actually. I do believe it was poor sportsmanship, but you have to at least go, well, wait a second, because if you just go by reactions, you believe everything that's negative.
Yeah, you could go bouncing back and forth like you're in a time.
And I'm not trying to cover for Dion. I do think that they are poor sports. I think they were poorly prepared. I do think they're a slightly, and by slightly, I mean razor thin better version of last year. I don't know that they'll go bowling because they're so much like last year's team. I do wonder how long Shedeur is going to hang in there at this rate. And I do wonder if there are any remnants of the Sanders clan in Boulder after this year. All that's very fair.
Well,
but people are just so quick to react to this family that it's hard to even wade through
What's
all
true
of the
or not,
smoke and mirrors. Yeah.
Shiloh had surgery on his forearm. You mentioned that. Shedeur took a beating. Maybe he just needed to get into hell. Or because if they win that game, is he bouncing around, throwing up the look at my ring or my watch or whatever? So there's where that comes in. And that was
I gave Shedeur a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in that he was physically mauled in that game. And if he was going to go out 2 minutes before it was over and go to the locker room, like I kind of didn't care about it. I was like, look, if you got beat up in the game, go like if they're checking on him. The problem was it wasn't, I think where it looks bad is he was not going there with trainers. It was just
I get it. I get it.
That's where people like, okay, if you're beat up, then why are that like there's no trainer going?
They don't do that for any other quarterback though.
No,
that's my point. And then after the game, and look, I'm not defending Colorado. Like I'll say it, like poor sports. Yup. Like things here and there you can criticize. Absolutely. I just don't like the line. Like there's enough going wrong that you don't need to make up stuff to try to make it look worse than it is when it's already bad. Like, for example, Shedeur in the post game, I see the same people like, oh my God, he's throwing his O-line under the bus. And I actually watched the video and I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but it's not as egregious as it was being made out to be either. It wasn't like he's like, these guys are bums. He was saying like he was getting hit a lot. The other guy wasn't. Guess what? That was true. Now, is that quarterback leadership that you want to see? Maybe not. So I'll back away from that there.
Yeah, but that's kind of throwing your offensive line a little bit under the bus, which they already know.
No, it is. It's fine. But I'm saying the way it was described, the way I initially saw it was like I was expecting it to be like these guys suck, they're bums, and then I watched it. I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but yeah, you probably should have worded that a little bit differently.
Was he throwing his offensive line or his coordinator under the bus? Because he was talking about, we got to shoot our shot, and if you can't run the ball, let's do what we do.
See, I don't know. Like either way, you can pick it apart, and either way, you have a valid point. I just don't think there needs to be all this extra mustard on the Colorado story, like the music thing, for example. Yeah. I just feel like that's taking something that's already good enough to pick apart and adding, lies to it, basically. But yeah, that was not a good look in any way, shape, or form. And you wonder how much others are looking at Shedeur and just the way he's handling things and going, well, I don't like the way he walked off early. I don't like the way he threw his offensive line under the bus. And man, we're 2 weeks in, so you don't need to make up stuff.
Travis Hunter is most receivers want the ball. He's frustrated. He had 8-9 catches for 110 yards, but he was pretty much bubble wrapped.
Oh, they were totally neutered. I mean, Nebraska beat their backsides, and they didn't leave any doubt about who the better team was. So all that's very fair. I just don't feel like you got to create stuff to add more to what's already kind of a messy situation. That's all.
All right, here we go on a couple of things. Let me get to a couple of individual things, Garrett. Let's go to Ashton Jeanty and then Scattaboo. All right. So Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. My goodness, they were right on the cusp of a great win, and they just could not quite seal the deal. And Ashton Jeanty, look at this stat. He's on pace right now. And again, it's going to be hard to keep up 250-something yards a game. But that's where he is at 459, 9 touchdowns. And he's on average to break the possibility of breaking Barry Sanders' single-season record, which is just over 2,600. We've discussed him. Everyone knows we're a part of his PR campaign. But he earns that. What he's done and what he did with Oregon and what he's done so far has been spectacular. And he had another big game against a team that a lot of people thought early on could be playing maybe in the college football playoff, winning the Big Ten, possibly a national championship caliber team, although they've got to get better too. But that's another story with Oregon. That's Ashton Jeanty.
Before we say Oregon's not as good, maybe we need to admit that Boise State is really good. Because that could have just been two good teams playing right there. Now, should Oregon maybe be a little better than they have been early on? Yeah, but I don't want to take away anything from what Boise State did on Saturday and what Ashton Jeanty is doing, which is fantastic and should be the Heisman frontrunner through 2 weeks, if you can even say you have one. What he's done the first 2 weeks of the season is electric and fantastic, and I hope everybody outside the blue turf knows that he's doing it too.
Yeah, he's good. He's so fun to watch.
Yeah, he was great on Saturday. They just didn't have enough in the end, and it wasn't on him by any means. He did his part, and he's somebody who's looking like he's got a real opportunity to end up in New York at the end of the year, and that's a really difficult task these days for somebody playing at a school like Boise State. So that's just how good he has been and how good he's been these first couple of weeks. So he's setting himself up really well. That would have been a a monstrous win, obviously, but I do think that part of that is Boise State's pretty good. They just didn't have enough around his performance to nail the door shut. And I do think Oregon's skating on real thin ice. I do wonder if part is it's a little bit of both. It's that they're not as good as maybe expected, but also Boise State was better than maybe people anticipated. But Oregon certainly playing with a lot of fire here early on. But that was a really fun game, and I was bummed they couldn't pull it out because that just would have been a great upset. But it was a valiant showing nonetheless, and he's making a lot of noise and hearing his name a lot around a lot of different college football talking circles.
We will have our Big 12 pod today at around 4:25. One more team that's off to a nice start, and who knows how long they continue it. And that's not the downgrade what they've done, because they have won twice. Arizona State beating SEC's Mississippi State, and Cam Skattebo, 33 carries, 262 yards, scored 3 times, also had some receiving yardage, and was a dude in that win. A really nice start for Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils.
I was surprised by this, but maybe not as surprised as I would have been normally. Kenny Dillingham's one of the best offensive minds in football. If he's got tools, he's gonna be able to use them. And so I'm not surprised that this happened, especially in a transitional year, especially first year for Jeff Lebby on the road. It probably felt like 3:00 in the morning to them because they kicked off so late, all those things. But Arizona State took it to them, and off to, let's see how they do. I mean, I really like Kenny Dillingham. I think he's got huge potential as a coach, and if Arizona State can ever get out of their own way, they're going to be fun to watch.
They're way better than people expected. A lot of people, myself included, had them towards the bottom of the Big 12. It was a really nice win. I think Mississippi State's a fine team. They're not very good, but that's still a team who's probably, bigger and stronger than you in a lot of areas. And, Skattebo said after the game that he felt disrespected by them putting like 3 guys on the line and expecting that to be enough to stop him in that running game. And so they had a point to prove, and I think they proved it loud and clear that they are not going to be a bottom dweller this year. They're going to be much better than people anticipated. And in the case of Mississippi State, a lot tougher than the Bulldogs anticipated. So they had a big play. I don't know if you saw Cullen fight with a touchdown.
Our young man from Tatum who
Blake
joined the show
with a bad decision that I wondered after week 1, he had a really nice week, and it's like, okay, but I wondered how that was going to settle in, and then that looked a lot like Blake Shapen at Baylor. It didn't look that much different. Like a play like that, especially of just trying to make something out of nothing, but it turns into disaster. That was a huge play in that game. But, yeah, they pretty much controlled that. Looked like they were going to give it up late potentially, but were able to hold on, and that would have been an awful loss had they not been able to hold on. But they did, and so it was an impressive win, and one that you definitely feel like has got them on a pretty nice trajectory right now. If they can just keep running the ball that well, they're going to have to get more out of the passing game, but I do think they are better than expected.
They have Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, and Ole Miss. Those are 5 of the top 7 teams in the country right now on their schedule, plus games that who knows what happens with Florida.
On Mississippi State's schedule, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I was saying that. A&M and Arkansas along with, they have a UMass game stuck at the end, but they got Toledo this week. So they may win a few, but it's going to be a tough road with who's on their schedule at this particular time. When we come back, Nicole Auerbach was embedded, I guess you could say, inside Lincoln, Nebraska throughout last week for NBC Sports. She will join us. Plus, we'll discuss, she knows the AD at Pittsburgh who got fired today, and that story. Phil Bennett was there at Pittsburgh, and we'll ask him about that as they fire their AD and his thoughts about, hey, we haven't forgotten about BYU's win on Friday night against SMU. We'll say in the Big 12, who's up, who's down, and who's just kind of treading water after the second week of the season. We appreciate your time. If you don't mind, click the like and subscribe button. And I think we pretty much have gotten all of it so far. I don't have the live sheet, by the way. I don't have one of them. What do we have first?
Petty.
Okay. We'll come back. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. As you get older, usually when you get into your early 40s, and especially as you get closer to 50, but it can even start slightly earlier. But 1 out of every 3 or 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, and Dr. Kent Petty wants to help you with that. What are the symptoms? You just don't feel right. And you have a pretty good, decent day when it comes to being, you exercise a little bit, or you're fit, or you have a great diet, but something's missing. Testosterone can be an energy booster for you. Also, your sex drive's not the same. Same issue. Your focus is not the same. There's a lot of things. And I had not always mentioned this, but you might have developed around your gut a little bit of body fat that has not been there. Not a lot, but that can be the problem too with low testosterone. Contact him, pettycliniclowt.com. Tell him that I sent you, and they will set you up to get your blood work, take care of that, get the results, and then contact you. If you need testosterone injection, they have it at pettycliniclowt.com.
Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland at Allen Samuels in Waco. Choose between 2 or 3 rows and save $12,000 or take advantage of 0% financing. Looking for something smaller? Drive home a 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4 and save $9,760, or take 0% financing and get $3,000. Don't miss out during the Make This the Summer of Jeep event at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we deliver your next adventure. See dealer for details.
Come by, let's be friends. In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak, 365 Sports. Nicole Auerbach, NBC Sports, who was embedded in Lincoln, Nebraska, Colorado, and also so many other things to discuss when it comes to college football, including the change at AD at Pittsburgh. Nicole, if you don't mind, let's start with that. You, Heather Lyke was someone that a lot of people had great respect for, had been there not quite a decade, but the most of the reaction I've seen has been a surprise on that one.
Yeah, very, very shocking. I think, she's been among the leaders in college football. She's been, involved in the football oversight committee. She's been on a lot of groups that have helped shape where college football is today. She's been at Pitt for a long time. She extended Pat Narduzzi. She gave Jeff Capel a chance to turn things around, which he then did for the men's basketball team. I've always heard great things from the other coaches at Pitt about her. So that was definitely a surprise. But, when new presidents come into these schools, a lot of times they like to make their mark as they're figuring out their landscape, their allies on the campus. And I think it just becomes very challenging, especially, for athletic directors who maybe have been there for a while. And, again, you have an AD or a president who come in. I think right now across the country, there's just a lot of tension between the presidents and ADs, especially, with this House settlement and all this stuff about the future of college football, where the money is coming from, where it goes. I just think that's created a lot of tension on a lot of different campuses. And, it spills over. But again, I think just a lot of shock, considering just how well respected she was. And the teams across the board being in a good place at Pitt.
Yeah, the thing you mentioned there about her being on the committees that are steering the future of college sports would make me think that she's maybe someone you'd want to have at the helm. So yeah, that's why it's more confusing, because now you have to find somebody else who's kind of got that acumen. And I think she was
just named the AD of the year last year.
Those kind of athletic directors are in short supply, because it's kind of, you have to think differently. And right now there's still people kind of stuck in the mud of the old ways.
Right. I can't imagine that she'll be out of work long for all those reasons. And she's been a candidate for some of the top jobs that have been available in recent months. So yeah, definitely a shocker. But that is someone who is, extremely talented. And, on a personal level, like, I'm frustrated because there's not that many women who are, ADs of FBS athletic departments. And so it's always frustrating to see, again, a surprise change there, or, you wonder about the dynamics at play, someone not having enough support. That's always just very frustrating, because it's very hard for women to get these jobs. And, when the leash is shorter than it really should be, it's just frustrating, because you just know that it's hard to get those jobs in the first place.
Nicole, in terms of the action that we saw on the field this weekend, what did you think of just the show in Lincoln, the big win over Colorado, and what that means for Matt Rhule and the Cornhuskers?
Yeah, I think it was a huge win for Nebraska. And listen, Colorado's not going to win a ton of games this year, but this was a team that beat them last year. They're both first-year coaches. There was, a lot of hoopla around that game. And I just think that Nebraska was frustrated by it. I think they believed that they were a better team. But last year's team also turned the ball over so much, right? Like, they were minus 17 on the season. And, even though we saw the progress on the defensive side of the ball, I think you were still waiting for it to all come together. And now it looks like they have that, right? Obviously, you have a 5-star true freshman quarterback who wants to be the guy that leads Nebraska back to relevance. But also, you just have an offense that is not turning the ball over. You have a quarterback who can protect it and still be confident. But, the running backs aren't. They're playing a lot cleaner. So then you can really see that they are able to control a game the way that they did, even though I know Matt Rhule said, they were a little bit too conservative in the second half. They didn't need to do more. But, then you can let that defensive front control the game on the other side of the ball. You can just be the physical team that they want to be, and win games that are really sound and really much the way that the great Nebraska teams are, where it's just, the identity of the black shirts and things like that. So I think it was cathartic, but I think it was really important for them to show the nation that they are not the same team that lost to Colorado a year ago, and that they can put these pieces together, that they are building and rebuilding in a very sustainable way. And that's how Matt Rhule's done it in multiple places, as you guys know.
Nicole, you were there, and you know the struggle for the decade now. That's one of the couple of moments in that game that Nebraska fans haven't seen, along with a win, even though you're right, Colorado may not be in the end a great win, but any win when you haven't been winning is a good one. What do you see inside those doors that has been developed, as far as you hear about that word culture and what is being preached by Matt Rhule inside Lincoln at Nebraska?
Yeah, I think the culture is really strong. This is, someone who I think has built really great relationships with college players in a number of different circumstances and different places and different college towns, parts of the country, because he's just really good at connecting with people. He brought a number of people on the staff that have been with him at those previous stops and understand how they do it. And a huge part is that defensive identity, which I think he's been really clear about. But, they start these team meetings. Everyone's got to dap up their, the people sitting near them, give them a hug, check in on everyone around you. And then just the individual meetings, it's just a good culture. We were in a D-line meeting, and it's just, it's very engaging. The players are really a big part of it. And, you can tell that the coaching staff feels like they've got a good team. They tell them that, and they want to hold them to high standards. So like they're pointing out mistakes that they're seeing because they know they're fixable. And so they're, it's not like they're yelling at these players, apologies, but they're holding them to a high standard because they know that they can fix it. And I think they just have a really good balance of that, of pushing them. But clearly, like, again, the hug, the love, all that stuff, the support is always a part of, kind of every meeting and every part of that feeling. And so it's a good combination, because I think you see the schedule for Nebraska, you see that it's very possible, very likely even, that they'll be bowl eligible in October. So you won't have that hanging over this team of like, oh, can they get there? Can they get there? Can they snap this streak longer than anyone else in FBS? You just don't have, or in the Power Five, if you don't have that stress, I don't think you're going to see that with this team. And they're just getting more and more confident. Like, they were very clear, publicly to not like say too much about Dylan Rhule. Like, they didn't want to put too much pressure on him. Like, he's already going to have that as a true freshman starting at Nebraska and with his family history there. But they've been incredibly supportive of him behind the scenes. They see him study, they work with him. They see how seriously he's taking everything. So like, they're doing all the things to support a guy like that behind the scenes with veteran players and pieces around him, allow him to build his relationship with the O-line and the run and the receivers and all the things that he wants to do. They just have a really good feel for all of that, I think, where it's not overly, involved, but they're not hands off. Like, I think they have a really good balance of all of that right now. And it just like felt very positive. And again, like, I think the coaches, they're like, you guys are good. You guys are capable of doing all the things that we want to do. And they don't shy away from that. And I think that they're not going to be worried about, like, everyone's going to be so positive coming out of the Colorado game. Like, I would imagine that the culture inside the room is exactly the same today as it was a week ago.
Nicole, elsewhere in the Big Ten, Oregon has played 2 close games right off the top. Has your opinion changed about the Ducks?
I was very high on them coming into the season, and I still think they're going to be a good team. I'm definitely more concerned about the offensive line and like Dylan Gabriel and how that's working, which is always a concern when you bring in a transfer quarterback. And there's turnover on the team. They lost a lot of guys to the NFL draft at key positions, but I do believe that will get better. Apologies.
That's okay.
But it's concerning that, they've already given up more sacks in 2 games than they did all last year. But again, that's on the quarterback to like recognizing what is he seeing, where do his eyes need to be, as well as the offensive line. So that needs to improve. And I think they need to improve pretty quickly because they've got Ohio State in a month, but I'm not ready to write them off just yet. I think that what they have is still fixable. They just need to spend a little bit more time working together and also getting the better starts in these games, because that's been definitely a concern. You can tell Dan Lanning is very frustrated because he knows that they're more talented than they're playing right now.
Nicole, we had a mega showdown, 2 of the bluiest blue bloods in Michigan and Texas in Ann Arbor on Saturday. Texas handled that like it wasn't that even of a matchup, quite honestly. What were your thoughts coming out of it? Was it more about Texas or more about where Michigan sits for you?
I think overall it's more about Texas, because I think, coming out of that and especially seeing just how well they were playing just like every grouping, right? Like on the offensive line, the defensive line, at quarterback, skill position, like it was just it was just such a sound performance across the board. So you come out of that being like, all right, like them getting the CFP last year, not a fluke. Doesn't matter who they lost. Like, they're building off of that. They're not going anywhere. I think it's fair to consider that they should be in that category with Georgia and Ohio State. I would take Oregon out of that top tier right now. I think they have to play their way in. So I think those are the 3 teams that have looked the part of national title contenders so far, and Texas is absolutely in that group. On the other hand, like Michigan, I think we all thought there would be a huge drop-off. You lose 13 NFL draft picks, and then you have coaching change, and like basically the entire defensive staff goes with Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. But still, I mean, this is clearly like even more of a drop-off than anticipated. The offensive line, the quarterback play, it's been subpar. And because they couldn't really sustain drives and score points, that game felt very much out of reach very quickly for Michigan. It felt very much like one of these teams is on a completely different level than the other. So that's where I think, there's concerns with Michigan about the personnel. And then even, you've got some great defensive players there, but do you have enough around them? And then do you have any depth Otherwise, that defense might be on the field quite a bit against the good teams on this schedule. So I think, you're recalibrating your expectations for Michigan. I think they were right on the cusp of, like, can they be a playoff team? I think with the schedule, with the way that we've seen them so far, you've got to have them on the outside looking in as of now. But again, I think the main takeaway coming out of that game was Texas is in that top tier of teams that are true title contenders.
Nicole, last thing, and we appreciate it and appreciate your time, is what Thomas Hammock is going to join us in the next segment. And what a phenomenal story and publicity exposure for Northern Illinois. He's an alum, what it's meant, and your thoughts about that win for that program, which had like 13-some million impressions over the weekend, and then also what it means for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame.
Yeah, huge win for Northern Illinois. And I thought that the post-game interview with Thomas Hammock and what we learned about him and his program, I thought was awesome. I mean, the nation certainly fell in love with him and the team quite a bit. And also people love seeing underdogs pull off wins like that, especially against blue blood like Notre Dame. But the concern for the Irish is just that they're not making the games boring that are supposed to be boring. Brian Kelly did. Where these games weren't close and they just handled business. He struggled in some of the big games, right? Marcus Freeman's won some of the big games, but these are the types of games that they need to handle. And there was such a letdown coming off of the win against A&M. Plus, then, you just really haven't seen Riley Leonard do much since he's gotten there. It was a big, highly touted get out of the portal. And yet they're in the small group of teams that hasn't thrown a touchdown pass so far this season. So, I think that he can be better, but I think that's got to be a deep concern, especially with, the inexperience of the offensive line for Notre Dame.
Nicole, you guys are embarking on a new show there at NBC with the Big Ten and all of that. I watched it this week. You guys look like you were having fun. How's the chemistry in the crew? And we've had Joshua Perry on the show, I don't know, 10 times maybe. He's one of the best. We like having him on, and Chris Sims is always entertaining. What's the dynamic like?
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. Yesterday, Saturday was a long day because we had 4 games across Peacock and NBC. But it was awesome, and I think it's a really good mix. We have figured out, a way to cover the top national stories and also the Big Ten. And, our schedule's awesome. It was great to have Nebraska, Colorado and get to blow out that game, which deserved it. It was massive storylines and stakes for both teams coming into that one. So it's been awesome. It's been a blast. And I'm excited to get to hang out with those guys, for the duration of the season. But it's really cool to work with Maria. We all saw her on game day and know how much she loves college football. So I think she's particularly pumped to have college football and NFL duties on the weekend.
Hey, Nicole, glad you're where you are. Fantastic opportunity for you. Always appreciate your work. Thanks for your time, and have a great week.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Nicole Auerbach, NBC Sports, with us for 365 Sports. She was in Lincoln, but a lot of the games. In fact, Thomas Hammock will join us from around the corner, Northern Illinois football coach, in just a moment.
Yeah, it was really interesting weekend, especially in the Big Ten. And, I think we're seeing something though across the board. Look at Northern Illinois, Tim Brando said it. There's not a talent gap like there used to be. So if you rest on your laurels,
I think there still is at the top.
But if you're not one of those teams at the top, and Notre Dame clearly isn't, and there's not the same kind of talent gap between a Notre Dame and a Northern Illinois, even in a mediocre Notre Dame year, that there was before. And there's not a talent gap between, teams like in the bottom of their, like Arizona State and Mississippi State. Everybody's kind of the same. And then you've got these teams at the tippy top. But I think that's going to start to change too.
So there we are. We'll have Thomas Hammock, the head coach at Northern Illinois, in just one moment. He's calling us. We'll have that. We'll also look at the Big 12 from top to bottom, from what's happening this week, a couple of games on Thursday and Friday this week. And then also we'll look back at what happened, who's up, who's down, and who kind of went one way or the other or neither way. Who lost, they were supposed to lose. There were a couple of teams of disappointments. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club coming up this week. There's Lunch with a Legend. It will honor the 1974 Southwest Conference Championship team. Grant Taft, miracle on the Brazos, a comeback win against Texas after what were threats, in fact, maybe innuendos, that the football program would be shut down. They did not draw very well, and there are times when Baylor has struggled with that. And then 1974 happened, and they're going to honor that team. Grant Taft and the players who were on that team who are back, they will do that on Friday, Lunch with a Legend. That's on Friday, September 13th. And then during that day, as they host Air Force on Saturday night, they will have many events around the tailgating at McLean Stadium. So for more information, go to their Facebook page or go online and Google alumni.web.baylor.edu. Go to the events page, Lunch with a Legend. That's coming up on Friday and honoring 50 years strong the 1974 Southwest Conference Championship team coming up Saturday when they host Air Force.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select Choice and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Word came down today that Carol Dawson passed away. He was 86 years old. I got to know Carol. He was from East Texas, where I worked for a long, long time, and from Alba, Texas, and then played at Paris Junior College and Baylor, was a pretty good basketball player, and then was a part of the Rockets run for nearly 20 years, including an assistant coach on their mid-90s NBA championship teams. So Carol Dawson passed away today. He is, in fact, was 86 years old. So Carol Dawson, a tough story there. Paul mentioned James Earl Jones, the great actor, also passing away today.
Before we get to Coach, I just want to say one thing about CD. I got to sit next to him at probably 3 or 4 Baylor games over the years where he all of a sudden just popped in and couldn't get to his seat. So he sat next to me wound up being like a long time. I've been privileged enough to sit next to Gil Brandt during football games and learn more than I ever could in life. And the same thing with Carol Dawson in basketball. I mean, walked out of there going, Well, I feel like I've watched 60 games in 20 minutes.
Or about 12 documentaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thomas Hammock, Northern Illinois, beat Notre Dame, and what a story. What it's meant to his alma mater, what it's meant to his football program. And Coach Hammock, it's an honor to have you on today after the huge win in South Bend. Thank you for your time. Can you try to explain what the last 2.5, 3 days have been like for you in the program?
No, it's been a whirlwind, obviously. A lot of emotions, a lot of great excitement about NIU and NIU football. And I'm just happy to be a small part of how to try to move this program forward.
Coach, after the game, your post-game interview, you were overcome with emotion. You had tears in your eyes. I mean, this is your alma mater. It runs through your DNA at this point. Did you even, try to think about what that would be like if you guys had won the game, or did it just hit you all in the moment?
It just hit me all in the moment. All week I told our players, if you guys just follow these steps, we will have an excellent chance to compete at a high level. And obviously, you don't know what a game is going to turn out like while you're in game. And then when we blocked that kick at the end, I just felt, all of the thoughts and all of the sacrifices and all of the different things that we've been through over the course of my 6 years here just hit me at that instant.
Coach, how'd you celebrate?
Well, I went home and hung out with my family. My son plays football, and he had a game that day. And I said, listen, I'm a coach, and you're a player. You cannot miss your game. So I just believe in, following those steps. So, I was anxious to get back to my family and spend time with them. And they wound up keeping me up all night talking about the game and how they watched it and all these different things. But that was good to do from that aspect.
Coach, I saw the quote, I guess it was on the Dan Patrick show about Rocket Ismail. Can you tell our audience what you told your team, your players the night before, and they didn't quite maybe put 2 and 2 together?
Yeah, no. I mean, I was trying to get our team to understand, listen, we are playing the 2024 Notre Dame Fighting Irish, not Notre Dame of yesteryear. And I was like, Rocket Ismail is not coming down that tunnel. And, I didn't get the type of reaction that I was looking for. So I realized, Rocket Ismail was playing when I was young. So they probably have no idea who that is. So then I had to alter it and give some names that they would at least recognize. But for me, Rocket Ismail was one of the best players in college when I was watching college football. So I gave him Joe Montana and Jerome Bettis and Ricky Waters, guys in the pros that had great careers in the pros. But as far as a college student athlete, Rocket Ismail was as good as they come. But I just had to get them to understand we are playing a team that, running down that tunnel tomorrow, not all the great players that had history at Notre Dame.
Yeah, look, you're gonna have to send us some YouTube videos so they know how good he was.
Yeah, TikTok. They don't have TikTok of all the great players, from the past. If they had that, they would probably know it. They look at all those videos all the time.
Coach, how do you enjoy this, but also make sure your team realizes this is game 2 of many more to come, and it's not like the season ends here?
Yeah, no, I'm glad we have a bye this week. We put a plan together for the first 6 weeks of the season. And this bye couldn't come at a better time. So we have an opportunity this week to go back to training camp style practices because we don't play an opponent. So we're going to get after it on the practice field this week and make sure they understand the standards and expectations of the process of getting better. And that'll be a great chance for us to refocus them on what it takes to continue our mission.
Coach, the amount of publicity for the school, not just the win against Notre Dame, but for the entire university, a place where you earned your degree. You're an alum. You played there. You know it. I love what you said. It's the window to the campus of the university, what athletics can bring to the table. What has it meant from top to bottom, you think, with your campus at Northern Illinois?
Well, hopefully they use this opportunity as a way to, grow NIU. When I went to school here, there were, 22,000 students. Obviously, enrollment numbers across the country has declined, but this is an opportunity to increase enrollment, increase interest in the school, increase resources, build new buildings. I mean, these are those type of moments that you have to capitalize on. And the better our university is, the easier it becomes to recruit to, and to be able to sustain the type of program I would like to build here.
Coach, let's just pretend I'm a guard. I want to come to NIU. I'm thinking about it. What's your recruiting pitch to me?
Well, my recruiting pitch to you is there is a unique experience here at NIU. If you are into NIL and different things from that standpoint, we have that, but that's not how we lead the conversation. We lead the conversation with love and the ability to connect and to build genuine and authentic relationships. And we're going to help you develop. If you're interested in being developed in a program where, we're going to have your best interest at heart, come to NIU. If that does not interest you and you're looking for a quick, couple dollars in your pocket, you should go somewhere else. But we are going to help you develop. The origin of a coach is to take something of value from one place to another. Your parents have gotten you to this point. Our job is to get you ready for life, and that's what you get from an NIU experience.
When the opening came at your alma mater, I think Rod Carey was there before you, and Northern Illinois has had success. This is not like something new, but beating a team that ranked highly ranked is obviously very unique. What was it like to be a part of that search for where you went to actually and you played and got your degree?
Well, I think, I always told my wife this was my dream job. And I was in Baltimore and doing well and making, great. I was in a great financial situation. And then when NIU came about, it wasn't quite as great as the situation I was in. And my wife turned and looked at me and she said, "We're going to figure out how much of a dream job this is for you." And I told her that that's the job I want. I want to impact young people and give them a chance to develop. So, I went when it came open. Obviously, I have a relationship with Sean Frazier dating back to Wisconsin, and when he called, I was going to go full speed ahead to try to get the job and have an opportunity to lead the young men in this program.
Well, you were a GA at Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, Minnesota for a pretty good time, and then Wisconsin again, and then with the Ravens in the NFL as the running backs coach when Northern Illinois opportunity opened up for you. Why this team? Why is this team, and you have a lot of games to play, but why is this team possibly special?
Well, I think, a lot of these kids been with me the whole time in their career. We got 21 guys that's been here for the whole time of their career, which is the third most in the country behind Stanford and Navy. And obviously we know why people stay at those schools. Yep. So for us, we have built a culture. We built a program. Guys love being here. I love being around them. We won a championship in 21, but this is a more complete football team in every aspect. And hopefully we can continue to keep our focus and continue to stay humble and grounded where we can play the way we need to play week in and week out.
We asked this to most of anybody. It could be an athlete. You were one, and now you coach them. If they have a big moment, somebody wins, for example, a championship or a gold medal, how many text messages did you have on your phone by the end of the day or when that game ended on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm still trying to respond to them. It was unbelievable. The outpouring of support after that game. And I appreciate everybody that reached out to me. And one thing I've always believed as a coach is, if somebody reach out to you, try to make it a point to reach back out in some capacity. And so I'm just still trying to work through that and get back to people because I was a young coach at one point and reached out to coaches and they did not respond. And that makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah. Did you have a number next to your text message app? Was it 200, 500? What was there a number that kind of like you looked at and smiled?
Yeah, it was over 400.
Wow.
So it's just, I was thinking to myself, I don't even know if I know 400 people, So, obviously, and then people, that you don't have locked in your phone, they send you a message and you're trying to figure out, I have no idea who this is.
Yeah.
unfortunately. And they don't lead with, hey, this is Thomas Hammock, and just wanted to say, they lead with, like you got the number saved.
Yep. Yeah. Like, hey, coach, congratulations. What was the one thing said to you that you remember by whoever it was, family member, coach, administrator, after the game that may have stuck with you more than anything else?
Well, I'm a huge Yankees fan, and Aaron Boone reached out to me on Sunday, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Wow.
To grow up being a Yankees fan. I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey, and MSN, the Yes Network, all those Bronx, just to have him reach out to me, and they in the midst of their playoff run was phenomenal. Obviously, I saved his number, so if they win the World Series, I am definitely going to give him another message.
That's awesome.
All right, what position would you put Aaron Judge at?
Aaron Judge.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, he can play anywhere. To save his body, I'll probably put him at first base just to, make sure he can, hit the ball.
No, if he was playing for you, if he was playing football.
Oh, if he's playing for me,
yeah.
It got to be tight end, something DN, something athletic. I mean, where he can make an impact.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, big man knocked down some passes, sacked the quarterback, stopped the run. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
How many interviews have you done since the win on Saturday?
I think I've done 12 today.
Whoa. Well, I honestly, when I reached out to Miss Turner, I said, we would love to get Coach on. I know he's going to be slammed. And then we text back and forth earlier today, and she said, today? And I said, yeah. And then she said 4:00. And I said, great. Glad to have you. What a great story. I know you, like you said, can decompress a little bit, but stay focused this week, go back to camp mentality, and then take on Buffalo. Thomas, congratulations. College football world had themselves a day on Saturday. Thanks for your time, and good luck going forward.
Thank you, and go Huskies.
Yes, sir. That's Thomas Hammock, the head coach at Northern Illinois. We mentioned that stat about 0-50, the MAC against teams ranked in the top 5, and I'm sure that a lot of conferences have that kind of a not very good record, but he was a running back at Northern Illinois, coached, as I mentioned, at some of the other places, and was with the Baltimore Ravens when that job opened up, his alma mater, and he got the job to handle the job with the Huskies.
Look, until somebody else is number 2, they're the answer to the trivia question, who's the one?
Yeah, no.
That's a huge deal.
The first time, and you don't know. It could be.
They'll always be the answer to the trivia question.
It might happen again. I don't know. This year, don't know about the matchup, but it could take another 10 or 20, 30 years before that happens. 365 Sports, thanks to Thomas Hammock. Thanks to Donna Turner with the Media Relations Department for setting that up. When we come back, we dive into, we have those pods. And the pod for today, when it comes to the Big 12, includes UCF, Houston, who almost pulled off a stunning win in Norman, did not work out quite the way it could have. Cincinnati and BYU that started the weekend with that win Friday against SMU. And this is 365 Sports. I won the bid. Last week, I got a 10-pound Angus roast, 10 pounds. And, it's the weather's starting to get a little bit cooler. I usually would not want to do a roaster with potatoes and bell peppers and carrots or whatever until a little bit later on. But I saw that. I said, I'm going to go ahead and put a bid. Texas Beef House had yet another live auction last week. There's another one this week and another one next week. I'll get to that in a minute. And I won the bid. And so I'll have that package, styrofoam package in a box, show up where I live, and I will at some point this week do some sort of a roast with potatoes and much more. And now, how about this? There's another bid about to start with TexasBeefHouse.com coming up this week on Wednesday and Thursday, and then again the following week on Wednesday and also Thursday. TexasBeefHouse.com, where you buy your steak and your product at the price you want to pay, not the price where there's a barcode and this is how much this costs. You decide, okay, I want to get some ribeyes, Angus ribeyes or New York strip or something like that, or a tomahawk or roast or sausage or ground hamburger or patties. You decide how much you want to pay for anything they have. TexasBeefHouse.com, just outside of Tyler, Texas. It's local, family owned by the Duvall family, and yet another auction coming up. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com. There'll be a box that pops up or go to bidonbeef.com and you buy what you want to buy when you want at what price at texasbeefhouse.com.
At Genco, our goal is to build long-lasting relationships while providing complete financial solutions for each step of life's journey. Our members enjoy fewer fees, lower rates on loans of all types, and higher yields on a wide variety of savings options. That's just a small part of the credit union difference. Visit Genco online, on Facebook, or come by one of our 5 locations today. Apply online for membership. Genco FCU, NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We will get specifically into Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. I want to look back at the weekend that was in the overall conference, and then we'll spend a lot of time on those 4 in the pod. And my question is, I'm going to give you guys a list that I have of the teams in the Big 12, who went up, who went down, and who kind of is about the same. Arizona State, we brought them up earlier at 2-0. BYU by opening up the weekend with a win against SMU. Utah by taking care of business. Oklahoma State, man, early on was dangerous against Arkansas, and they won the game in overtime. Iowa State, what a win. UCF handled their business. Who among the others I have not mentioned probably would you say the bullet's going down, or at least for now, it's like a back in the day of the top Billboard magazine, you had the bullet going up or down. Would it be Colorado and would it be Kansas?
Colorado's bullet's going way down. Kansas, man, holy cow. I mean, Jeff Grimes is already persona non grata there in Lawrence because they had big expectations for the season. Now, it doesn't affect them when it comes to the Big 12 yet, but that was a really disappointing offensive performance that they had against Illinois the other day. And, yeah, so Kansas took a hit. There are a bunch of other teams in the Big 12, lucky that we're not talking about them in this segment.
There are.
Yeah,
there are. But, Craig, you were kind of reacting to the Kansas loss to Illinois.
Well, I think what ended up happening this weekend was you had a big schedule. I talked about that last week, a big slate of opportunity, and the odds said that you'd probably go about 500, and I think they went 500.
Yep.
And there was an opportunity to be better than that. There's also opportunities to be worse than that. So ultimately, they finished right where you expected, with a few bragging rights and then some that were negated. And it worked out to where it was just all kind of square at the end of it, rather than a big gain or a big loss in terms of stature. But I think Colorado is clearly the one that's got the weights wrapped around their ankles right now, and it's just a matter of when they get thrown into the ocean. And if they lose to Baylor, like in a couple weeks, then they're going down to the bottom. Like that's at home.
They have Colorado State on the road this weekend, which they should have. Remember last year's game?
No, I get it. I totally understand, but I don't totally trust Braden Fowler, Nicolosi, and Colorado State. And that was was that a sign of things to come last year? Or was that more of just an effort at home that got a little score? I don't know, but they could definitely lose this weekend. But I'm just anticipating they won't, and anticipating them welcoming in Baylor, and that is the start of Big 12 play. And they could lose at home to a middle of the road Baylor team, and I think that would be we're in trouble. So I think they're in far more danger of getting thrown overboard. But I do think Kansas got a really huge reality check on Saturday, and I think part of it is, it was pretty predictable. You lost Andy Kotelnicki, and then some segments acted like Jeff Grimes, who maybe just didn't know him well enough, was going to come in and be Andy Kotelnicki, or there wouldn't be much drop-off. And I just always anticipated there was going to be drop-off because I watched Jeff Grimes for the last 3 years. And I also think Andy Kotelnicki's a pretty dang good coach, which is why he's ascending the way that he is and why Penn State was like, yeah, gimme. Now, they had a really bad week, too, compared to that win over West Virginia. So he's still got plenty to prove himself. But I just didn't buy into that wasn't going to matter. I thought it was going to matter pretty greatly, and I think that it has. I also think the biggest thing is that Jalen Daniels just isn't a superstar. That's the biggest thing. And whether that's us, and by us I mean media or fans overhyping him too much, that's fair. If it's still he's just knocking the rust off, that's fair. But I think that the main thing is this is not the Kansas offense from when it was working on all cylinders and calling great plays, and he's making huge plays, and he's this dynamic guy. Just none of that's there right now. So they have a good run game. They still have good receivers. They were still in that game. They could have won that game. But I just think that what we thought might be their strength is not their strength. They don't have a super duper star at quarterback right now, nor do they have the explosive offense that they had a year ago.
Well, he threw 3 picks, Jalen Daniels. And I didn't watch much of it. I saw some of the highlights. Neal had the 100 yards. They had a 50, 60 yards more than Illinois. That's the Brett Bielema type style. He's going to kind of slow it down, play pretty good defense, special teams, but they lost the turnover battle 4-1.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that. And especially when you're on the road or even at home against a pretty decent football team.
I didn't feel great about them going in. Remember last week, you kind of it's just Illinois. I don't know. I just felt like there wasn't enough respect being paid to the fact that this was very well could be a loss on the schedule for Kansas. I don't know. I just didn't feel like there was much expectation that would. I don't know. I just thought people thought Kansas would just roll in and win that game.
Well, they were ranked. That doesn't mean anything because it's a preseason poll.
2 weeks into the season.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I just thought going on the road against a Big Ten team who's actually been pretty okay. It's not like they've been terrible.
Yep.
Was going to be a challenge for them. And so I think that you're still way more worried about Colorado. I think Kansas can be okay, but I think the expectations, partly because their schedule is so easy on paper, is what had them. And then just Jalen Daniels is going to be Jalen Daniels, and he's not been his best version of his best self. So I think they're still going to be okay, but it's not what you wanted, obviously.
Okay. Those are just a couple of teams that took it on the chin that you thought could win. Colorado, that even though Nebraska was favored, and KU at Illinois. Let's discuss the pod. Let's start with Houston. Craig, you even mentioned this last week. Oklahoma, with what they have, and Houston has struggled. We know about the loss to UNLV. OU could have absolutely lost that game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was, I thought you said last week that there was no chance in hell that they could lose to Houston, which I would have agreed with. And in fact, I did. What happened here? And UH maybe rallied the troops, or is Oklahoma a mess?
I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I think Yeah, I did say that. I didn't think it was going to be close, but Oklahoma got way more fight than they bargained for. So I was wrong on that account. And I really thought that I was going to be sitting here going, hey, Paul, how's the karma? I think you handed it over to me because, here I was talking all this trash about Florida State. And I know multiple losses are coming for Oklahoma. I said that before I started even talking about Florida State. Like, my expectations rolling into this season weren't that they were going to go 12-0 in their first year in the SEC. But I definitely didn't anticipate them struggling as much as they did with Houston. So that was surprising to me. I think that on the one hand, if you're Oklahoma, just get them out of the way. Like, you have some major issues. That offensive line is very much a work in progress. You've got some good things on defense, but Jackson Arnold's just not that guy that he was made out to be ever since he was recruited, basically. Like, he's been talked about like he's Quinn Ewers or like he's Arch Manning.
Dylan Gabriel was basically asked to leave, right?
Yeah, hey, it's time for the Jackson Arnold show is what they told Dylan Gabriel, which I get. Dylan Gabriel's not the end-all, be-all, but he was pretty good. So I think a combination of a guy who's just not that guy yet and an offensive line that's just not where it needs to be is definitely complicating matters. And, they're a little bit out of sorts and not nearly where I thought they would be in terms of competing with Houston. So that was a reality check. But I also think it speaks very well to Houston that, I mean, look, Willie Fritz coached one game, and it was a bad game, but I never expected the locker room was going to quit on him. I do think, though, it was a really great showing that they did seem to rally, as you put it, and showed up the way that they did. I think that was very encouraging. I didn't expect them to fold after a game, but they very easily could have walked in and just expected to get their asses kicked, and instead they came out to kick some ass, and they nearly did it. And so I give them a lot of credit. I think that's a great sign for Houston that they responded to week one the way that they did and played Oklahoma so tough. Now, is Oklahoma not as good as we thought? Probably, but I don't think that matters at all in terms of Houston's response. That was a really, really good thing to see if you're a Cougars fan and Willie Fritz.
And Houston will host crosstown rival Rice coming up on Saturday night on ESPN+. All right, the other teams. BYU started the weekend with the win at SMU in Dallas. Dave Wilson had that huge article about SMU, like, oh, blank, here come the billionaires. It's a hell of an article. A lot of good background, and Phil Bennett was quoted in that. He'll join us today at 5. But that's a nice win for BYU. When you're BYU, Colorado, Baylor, and some of those teams right there on that, we don't know who they are. Every single win you can get is a good one, no matter who it's against. And in this case, on the road against a team that was kind of getting a little bit of hype.
Well, first of all, SMU has quarterback problems right now, and I didn't expect that. I thought Preston Stone would be better, but Garrett mentioned it earlier to me that he was able to watch the whole game and said it looked like he was standing in cement when he was back there. So they put in Kevin Jennings to get some mobility, but they still didn't get a lot out of the offense there at SMU. And BYU, the game was ugly, but guess what? That's what they needed it to be. And so they embraced the ugly nature of it and won the game. And that's a huge win for Kalani Sitake. Can build some momentum. Again, their schedule is tough, just like everybody else's, but that was one I don't think most people had them going in on. But here you see, again, there's not a lot of separation between a BYU and an SMU right now. And BYU won that game by being tough and physical and making SMU play the way that BYU wanted the game to go.
Yeah, that SMU quarterback situation is definitely something to watch. Preston Stone, I don't know what's happened. I thought he was going to be way better than he's been. I didn't anticipate that he would be like in doubt as even being the guy. I thought he'd be the guy and they'd sprinkle Kevin Jennings in or whatever, but like he's just not played well enough. And I don't know what is causing that exactly. So that's something that SMU's got to get figured out is the quarterback situation. But this was an ugly game. I mean, 18-15. Credit to BYU for rolling in there and just being, a couple plays better ultimately. But you look at both these teams in terms of offense, BYU was 2 of 13 on third down, but they were 2 of 3 on fourth down. So he had a couple of calls that they converted that were huge in terms of this game unfolding. SMU was 3 of 16 on third down. Now they were 2 of 4 on fourth down. So it's just one of those games. But when BYU needed to make some plays, they were able to do so. And I mean, 3 turnovers apiece. It was just
yeah. Well, we were doing a game, and there was nothing going on offensively.
No, it was just an ugly game. I mean, think about those third down percentages and the amount of turnovers. There was, not crazy amount of penalties, but there was enough that this was just like really sloppy. But I think the big thing was holding SMU to kicking field goals when they got into the red zone. Like, this is a potentially explosive offense, and you were able to limit them and force them into some field goal situations. I thought one of the things that Rhett Lashley mentioned was that BYU threw some different fronts at them that they were not expecting. So just in terms of like the coaching matchup, like Kalani Sitake and company threw them for a little bit of a loop that took them a little while to get adjusted to. And so that was just good coaching there that obviously had an impact on this game and gave SMU something they weren't expecting. But I think just converting on those couple of fourth downs were huge for BYU. I think SMU had a big fumble. You had big stops when you needed them, and you managed to get around what was not a great performance from your offense. So win however you need to win. It was certainly an ugly win, but it was a great win because they're 2-0.
Yep.
They weren't expecting to be 2-0 necessarily. They went on the road. They beat an ACC team who otherwise we would not have heard the end of it from their fans. If you're a Big 12 folk, you would have seen incessant SMU trash talk after that win, and instead BYU got the dub. So that was, I think, important just in terms of the online feel of the conference in these power versus power matchups. But yeah, it was just an ugly win that they happened to be the slightly better team. I think you still got to really wonder about Jake Rotzloff. I thought we'd see a little bit of Gary Bohannon in some packages. I thought he teased that, but we never saw Gary. So I don't know. I think you're going to have to see Gary at some point the way this is trending, but they're 2-0, so it is what it is.
And they play at Wyoming. It's a late game at Wyoming this week. By the way, one other BYU note on the side, Puka Nacua, who had that great year last year, is on the injured reserve list. He'll miss at least 4 games, a sprained PCL. So after the great year, he's going to be sidelined with a knee injury that he aggravated in their opening game against Detroit. So they play at Wyoming.
So they should be 3-0. Wyoming's not very good. So they should be 3-0, halfway to bowl eligibility. And I think that's a great start if you're Kalani Sitake and you're one of the lesser talked about teams into the conference or rolling into the season this year.
Now let's look at Cincinnati. They play this week or Saturday early morning at Miami of Ohio. They had Pittsburgh dead to rights. And I'm watching that score. And I'm kind of every once in a while getting on Gamecast. They got away from the dude that was having the game running the football. It seemed like I don't give Pittsburgh credit for coming back, but that would have been a very salty win for Cincinnati.
Yeah, that was a bummer that they lost that one there right at the end and, got away from what was working. But I do think you see a more contained Cincinnati team. They're not they didn't look as like much of an adventure as they were last year and not in a good way. Hopefully there's good things ahead for them, but yeah, that was a hell of a way to lose a game after you were in control for most of it.
Kiner finished with 100+ yards, and I saw a stat from Chad Brendel in the fourth quarter. He got like 3 touches. Now I don't know if that means they didn't have the ball quite a bit, but he had himself a pretty good game. He's at 200 yards over 2 games, and they just couldn't fit. 149 yards, 20 carries. But it seemed like they got away from it, and Pittsburgh ended up having a nice fourth quarter.
Pittsburgh had a great fourth quarter, and that was the story of this game. Cincinnati had no business losing this game. This was an awful loss for Scott Satterfield. I don't know how much they got away from Corey Kiner. Corey Kiner's definitely a name to know in the league. He's one of the better players, and he's certainly one of Cincinnati's better players, and he had a really good day. But I thought Brendan Sorsby also had a pretty good day for the most part, and then suddenly they were just unable to finish out drives, and you had a situation where Pittsburgh and Eli Holstein just made some big plays. I mean, for example, you had a 4th and 3 turn into a 38-yard touchdown. So next thing you know, it's 27-19. Cincinnati gets the ball back. They go 4 plays, 7 yards, give the ball back. 7 plays, 94 yards, touchdown. Pitt's all of a sudden 27-25, get another stop, and then a big gain on their last drive, and then they're kicking a field goal to win the game. And that was a complete unraveling. They had no business losing that game the way that they were in control with the score the way that it was, but they couldn't do anything on offense. And if you want to attribute that to not enough Kiner or whatever, that's fine, but Sorsby cooled off, and then Holstein and Pitt made some huge plays, and the Cincinnati defense just got gashed at the wrong time and the wrong moments, and it cost them dearly. So that's one that, if you want to be a Cincinnati fan, start circling the wagons and calling for Satterfield's head. I think it's still too early to do that, but that's the type of loss that sets you up for that, because they shouldn't have lost that game. So credit to Pitt for making some big plays, getting stops, and then having some big, large chunks of yardage, like the 4th down touchdown. Like, that's okay. You give up a conversion, but you don't give up a nearly 40-yard touchdown on 4th down. And that's what they did. So that was one of a handful of mistakes that cost them very dearly. And I don't know, that might be the difference in them making a bowl game at the end of the year or not. But I do think Cincy is slightly better than I expected. It was great to see Dante Corleone come back and play. So we were wondering, like, how long, once he was cleared, would he need to get back into action? And he was ready this weekend. So that was a real positive. But yeah, they completely blew it in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, Pittsburgh now 2-0. Cincinnati drops to 1-1. And as I mentioned, they have Miami of Ohio, who I believe last year won the MAC. And that game will be on the road on ESPN.
Well, and that's got some rivalry to it. So, I mean, that's not a game that I think you just sleepwalk. If you're Cincinnati, you got to be really careful about that one.
Yep. 21-point deficit, Pittsburgh winning 28-27. And then a conference game in Fort Worth at Amon Carter. TCU at home against Gus Malzahn, the Knights. And there's some conference games this week, including that one on Friday between both Arizona and K-State ranked, which we'll get to at some point this week, of course. But this is fun. This will be interesting to watch what UCF can do on the road, getting away from the bounce house against TCU.
Yeah, I'm curious about how they are against a team that is on their level or above, UCF. But KJ Jefferson was better this week. He was very efficient, 12 of 15. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot. He didn't have to do a whole lot. RJ Harvey, when you have that guy, it's just kind of like, all right, go ahead. They rolled past Sam, which not a surprise. This week will be a lot tougher. Now, if they do go into TCU and win, and I don't think TCU's, really where they want to be just yet after struggling at Stanford, and then they beat Long Island, but you're supposed to beat Long Island. I don't know. I mean, this will be a nice test for both of them, because both of them haven't really seen anybody yet.
UCF, Craig, is averaging about 400 yards rushing a game, so that takes some of the pressure off KJ. They're going to have to throw it with him a little bit, but they are – of course, they beat Sam Houston State, as Paul, you mentioned they're supposed to, with all due respect to what they do. But they're 2-0, and a good test for them to go on the road at Fort Worth against TCU.
Yeah, and they'll be underdogs, because I think TCU right now looks like the better overall team. But it should be a really interesting game, just because, we'll finally see these conference teams clash and start to know really what's what, and not just what we gathered or gleaned from the preseason or non-conference schedule. So, yeah, to actually see UCF, TCU, I think two teams that you find sort of in the middle to upper tier of the league. Now we'll have some separation and know a lot more about both these teams, because I don't think you learned a lot about UCF in this game, other than they took Sam Houston seriously, which they should, and which I said last week, if you remember, Gus Malzahn, coming from where he's come from, I thought he would treat Sam Houston very seriously, and he did. He even said as much, that he has a lot of respect for them, and they took it serious. But the game was pretty in hand pretty quickly. I mean, it was a no-doubter at halftime. It was not a no-doubter after the first quarter, but they were already up 14-0. And then by halftime, they were up, double scores. And you knew what the end result was going to be ultimately. But I did think this was once again a showcase for this run game. So how TCU defends RJ Harvey for starters, but then here comes Miles Montgomery, and then, oh, wait, here's Penny Boone, who are still kind of getting his feet wet and getting him acclimated. But, here's late in the game, and you think you want to see fresh. Here comes Penny Boone. We're going to start handing him the rock. So, here's KJ Jefferson. We'll throw him into the mix as well. So their running game really is something pretty nasty, and how the league's able to defend that, I'm very much looking forward to. But through the air, I thought KJ Jefferson had a better game. He was improved from the first week. I think it's a matter of just getting comfortable for him. And the more he plays in this offense, the more comfortable and better he should be. But it was definitely a step forward from week number one, when he definitely had a very poor start to his UCF career. This was much better. Kobe Hudson got involved, which is good to see, because it wasn't all just about the running game. He had a 100-yard game. And I think you feel pretty good about where they are, especially running, and especially if KJ Jefferson can can continue to improve. Colton Boomer in the kicking game's a weapon for them. So there's a lot to like there.
We haven't really learned much about them because they played New Hampshire and Sam Houston State. But you know what? They won. They took care of business. They blew both of them out. So that Long Island against TCU, and we saw them against Baylor, what was it, last year? 34 carries, 59 yards. So you have the UCF putting up massive numbers on the ground, and then TCU just completely smoked Long Island, which was not a surprise. But 34 carries, 59 yards means there was nothing. And so that will be interesting to see UCF in that run game against TCU and the defense with Sonny Dykes and company at 2-0 and escaping with that win against Stanford a couple of weeks ago, which they did, though. It was a nice win for them to come back and win on a late Friday night game. All right, so we've done Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. Let's go to a couple more things from last week. I'm going to name a team. Tell me what pops off the top of your head. Oklahoma State.
Lucky to get out with their lives, but they were better coached than Arkansas.
They were fortunate to win that game. I think that just like you said, the consistency in coaching is ultimately what put them over the top. But I think that Arkansas had similar athletes, if not better looking athletes in some places, and definitely brought the energy and brought a really good game plan in. But yeah, Oklahoma State, to their credit, I think that's a veteran win. And I think Mike Gundy he called it a culture win at some point. But I do think that's when you have an 8th-year senior quarterback. I'm just kidding, but everybody's back for them. Yeah, ninth. But that's where that comes into play. That's where that comes into play is in a game like that. So I think that mattered a lot in this game. It was having all the guys back that they've had and being able to build off of that. But they didn't look that great in week number 1. Like they looked like I take off some points for week 1 because it's the first game of the year, so I'm not expecting greatness right out of the gates. But you add in now week 2, and you look at that team and you go like, what's wrong with the run game? Like, why is this so hard? And, there's little questions that pop up about just, kind of how they've looked. Like, they're still one of the better teams in the Big 12, but they have to play better. Or they're going to get caught for sure.
All right. K-State and Tulane. K-State eventually won 34-27. Avery Johnson was okay, threw for 181 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Giddens had over 100. This thing here, because Mensa threw the ball all over the place against K-State. This one here was dicey, and K-State had just enough at the end, kind of like what we saw with Oklahoma State against Arkansas.
Yeah, they look, Avery Johnson, I've been touting this kid for the entire offseason, and I think he's going to be really good, but he's got to be able to have more wins in the passing game. The running backs are excellent and bailed him out a couple times. Again, he's a great athlete, but Kansas State was playing fast and loose a little bit there. And of course, Tulane, John Summerall is a badass. He had a defense that would knock your D in the dirt at Troy, and he's got one that gets really physical now at Tulane. They're very early on in their process there, but I mean, I don't see Tulane missing a beat now that Willie Fritz is gone because they made a great hire in John Summerall, and he gave Chris Klieman and those guys every last drop of what the Green Wave had. And I think Kansas State just won that game because they were maybe 2 to 3 guys more talented than Tulane is right now.
There's a big controversial call in this game, the offensive pass interference, which, if you want to break it down either way, I see both sides of it, but I definitely see why the call was made. I also know the situation, how it is arguing about officials. So I'm not going to get into that, but there was a pretty big call in the offensive pass interference on Tulane that definitely hurt them. And, maybe we're talking about this game differently if that's not the case. I'm not saying it was a bad call or not. I watched it a couple times, but I didn't get into the weeds on trying to break it down because it doesn't matter. K-State won the game, but that is certainly a play that you circle and you go hey, if that went differently, this outcome probably goes differently. So that point being, they were that close. They were that close they were a call away or just one more play away from losing this football game. We knew going into New Orleans and with John Summerall taking over for Willie Fritz that this wasn't a rebuilding Tulane program. Darian Mintz is a very good quarterback. They've got good skill players. Mario Williams, who was at Oklahoma's their best receiver. So he was running around a little bit. They've got some dudes. And so this was a dangerous game all along. Avery Johnson, is, learning. He's learning. He's learning on the fly in so many cases. I thought he still made some great throws, even though there are some that are not quite there just yet for him. But it's a work in progress, and he's just not going to be a star overnight. As much as his skill set will translate to him being a star as he continues progressing, he's not going to be that, however many starts he is into his career. I think we got to kind of keep that in mind with him, but he was good enough in certain moments. And really, DJ Giddens was the story offensively for them. He had a huge game for K-State, and they were able to pull one out that was looking really, really dicey. And that's one Tulane definitely has got to feel.
Guess who Tulane plays next, Craig?
Pretty sour about Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Oklahoma could very well lose that game. They absolutely could. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all at this point. So, they're going to have to be very, very ready for the Green Wave because they were this close to putting K-State down for their first loss.
Tulane can score points now. They that quarterback and what they did, they put up a bunch of yards. One note about here's from the old, who is this on the chat room? The old Barn Cat Go K-State. That is textbook example of offensive pass interference.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is I've seen debate from Tulane fans or Kansas fans.
Yeah,
hey, you don't call that in that situation.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying I'm not going to be an official and bogged down in that. Ultimately, the call was what it was. That's what I normally do. Is the call was what it was, and you move on and you go to the next play, and K-State won the game.
That's why we have not a rule. I try to. Is you can bring up a call, but no one's going to change anybody's
Here's
mind.
The thing. He had an incompletion the very next play, so there's an opportunity, and then he throws an interception.
Yeah.
So, you had two plays after that, and you're on the door. And so, the call may have affected you, whether right or wrong, but you still had two more plays right there to win that game, and you didn't get it done.
Yep.
Well, don't make that call in that moment as a really subjective thing because sometimes it's egregious. You don't make a ticky-tack call in the moment. That's where those things are silly, where, I think of the Miami-Ohio State national championship game where, I guess you could call that, but it's pretty ticky-tack and it didn't affect the play.
There's also people that respond by going, it shouldn't matter what time of the game it is. Your call is a call.
No, but that's why I'm saying, that's why that's a little subjective. But if you are, if the official does the gesture, if you put the gesture right up next to it and the guy is doing that, then you kind of have to call it.
Yeah.
You can't just be like,
Yeah, bottom line is they were very fortunate to win this football game. And they just got to be glad that they're 2-0 and not 1-1 because they very well could have been 1-1. Avery Johnson just continue to get better week to week, but Giddens was great. And there's just some things to work. I think every team in the Big 12 right now, especially if Cam Rising misses any time, are all pretty much in the same sort of universe. And they all just have to keep getting better every week. And I don't know that anybody's all that great. They're all kind of similar. I just talked about Oklahoma State. They've been okay. Kansas State's been okay. A lot of teams have been okay.
Well, Kansas State has Arizona this week.
Arizona has been
okay.
Fine. They've been fine. They were a reversal, and I know we'll get to their pod later on this week, but, that's a team that has not quite lived up to their expectations either. So everybody's kind of in the same spot, and whoever can get better quicker and maintain that consistency will be the team that spearheads this thing. But obviously, I think right now Utah appears to be, for me at least, the slightly better team versus the rest of the field, and that is barring Cam Rising's health.
There's some separation this week because of Friday night's game, which will be great on national television on Fox, 7 o'clock, 20th ranked Arizona at 14th ranked K-State. That's going to be a fun game to kind of watch to see what happens. And then there's that UCF-TCU game that will be interesting too. We'll discuss. All right, we got one more team. We're going to go ahead and carry it to the top, Garrett. We might need to work on a break. It's my fault. Texas Tech survived in week 1 to Abilene Christian.
That did not happen.
That did not happen against Washington State. And Jake Dickert after the game was saying, listen, this is who we are. It's not like we've been some spam or macaroni and cheese. We've been pretty good. And when I turned on that, or when I checked that score, I got an update. I was like, wow. And Washington State, I saw, got stopped on a 4th and 1 or 2 down deep in Texas Tech territory. Tech just did not have enough gas for this game in Pullman, and Washington State with a nice win.
First of all, John Mateer is one of the more fun players to watch in all of college football.
Where did he go to high school? I know he's a Texas.
He went to Little Elm.
Okay.
He went to Little Elm High School in Texas, and he is not the greatest passer in the world. It was all about his running really on Saturday in terms of what really killed Tech. He ran for nearly 200 yards. He was just slicing that defense up. Tech just looks like I don't know how to really describe it, but I guess the best way is they're just kind of a mess. Baron Morton's not great. The offensive line's not great. The weapons are kind of hit or miss. Now, hey, we should mention Taj Brooks didn't play, so that mattered. That was a big deal to not have your best player on the team on Saturday. So I do think having him would have changed things just slightly, but he wasn't going to play defense for them, and he wasn't going to complete passes for them, and he wasn't going to do everything else in between that also went wrong for them. But that is something of note, is that Taj Brooks did not play. But yeah, I don't know, man. Tech's just kind of a mess. They're not that great in any one area, and I think that now all of the offseason talk about the lack of hype is becoming more and more clear as we're a couple of weeks in of why that might have been the case and why you dialed back some of the, hey, like we're going to run the Big 12 and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was an ugly loss. That was an ass kicking is what it was. I mean, that was a game that really wasn't all that close in a lot of ways. And I was just really impressed with John Mateer for the second week in a row for Wazoo. And yeah, they were in the Pac-12 last year. Like they're at home late at night on a Saturday. Like that had all the makings of a loss for Texas Tech. And then the way they played, like that just ensured it. You give Wazoo some credit, but Tech's got a lot of problems all over the field that I just don't know how quickly you can correct some of them. And I also think one of the issues for them now is like when it rains, it pours. And I said this last week, but Micah Hudson didn't play very much again. And when you get a player of that caliber who's been pumped up like that and he's not catching touchdowns like right away, there you are in the post game and where's Micah Hudson? It's like that's probably the last of Joey McGuire's concerns right now is Micah Hudson's touches, but it's just another thing that's not like feeling great in Lubbock right now, if that makes sense.
They had nearly 500 yards, but 4 turnovers.
Yeah.
Deadly. Washington State ran for 301, and Mateer had 300 yards in total offense, 300 plus, and accounted for a couple of touchdowns. That thing got away in the second quarter, 27-10 at halftime, and then Tech just didn't have anything to do anything with it. So there we are with what they have. And
the Micah Hudson thing is interesting though, because just the way McGuire responded to one of the questions, it just sounds like he's not putting himself in the position to play.
1 catch for 4 yards.
Yeah. But he's been talked about both weeks about where is he. And the way McGuire responded to one of the questions, it just sounded to me, not trying to cause stuff here, but it sounded to me like, well, maybe Micah Hudson needs to like do something better. Like, I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but that's how I took it. And Joey didn't throw him under the bus or anything. It's just that like put 2 and 2 together. His response and the lack of touches, a true freshman with a lot of hype behind him. Like maybe he needs to grow up. I don't know. But yeah, that's clearly a storyline for them early on because there was a big storyline for them all offseason.
Ryan Wingo's the kid is a freshman at Texas, right? Who had a monster game, big play in their win against Michigan. I remember when that was going on. Texas has like 8, it seemed like 5-star receivers and 2 or 3 more coming in this year. They've got players, but I remember Micah Hudson was a dog, and he's a dog. I don't know what's going on there. Kim Coulter, Joey and Kitley actually tried to justify Hudson not playing slot. They both said, who are we going to pull?
Oh, yeah, he did say that.
Kim's not happy about that response.
Which, yeah, and I remember him saying that now as well, which I kind of understand to a degree. Now, I can understand where that's not a satisfactory answer for Texas Tech fans, but Josh Kelly's pretty good. Caleb Douglas is pretty good. Coy Aiken's pretty good. So his thing was like, all right, well, who am I taking off the field to put this freshman in? And so I can see where that's a divisive answer. But I can understand Joey's point. I can also understand the fan going, you just lost 37-16. You scored 16 points. So they had a lot of yards. Cool. We need guys to get in the end zone, and we think Micah Hudson can do that. I can see that point of view as well. But that's one of those things that when you're losing, that becomes a much bigger thing than it probably needs to be. And so it's becoming a thing, I think, because these 2 weeks have been so ugly for Texas Tech.
Kim Coulter just put something else in the chat, but we will hide that one.
I will say that. Let me translate. Kim disagrees with their assessment.
Oh, yeah.
It was about Micah Hudson cannot beat out Coy Aiken, who's a small school, a good player in high school, great player in high school, but big, tall kid. But then Kim went over the line, and we will hide that one.
No, and then like I said, if you listen to Joey's answer, you can look at it from both ways. But if you're a Texas Tech fan who's just watched them get beat by 3 touchdowns and not even really be all that competitive for most of that game, then you don't care about Coy Aiken's 50 yards. You think Micah Hudson can do better than that. And that's understandable because he's a 5-star true freshman. That was your biggest signing ever. So when you're struggling, people are going to clamor for that guy. And even when you're succeeding, people are still going to ask about that guy. So again, that's the ups and downs of having a player of that high profile.
Yeah,
when things aren't going
they
well.
had a lot of yards, but they always going to have. They just they're going to put up yardage, but they didn't put up any
Morton's
points.
got to take care of the football, and they got to take care of Morton, and it's just none of it's working right now. And no Taj Brooks. That's just a recipe for what you saw on Saturday night.
Yeah, he had 2 picks, 58 passes, and they ended up with 16 points despite 500 yards of total offense. When we come back, a couple of notes to get to with Phil Bennett to look back at some of the games. He said Texas would roll through Michigan. He was right. We'll look at what he thought about Notre Dame after the win against A&M, losing to Northern Illinois. His thoughts about a couple of, including the story about SMU football when he was there and what he experienced. Of course, it was not good at that time at all. We'll have that with Phil Bennett, former college football coach, will join us, by the way, via Zoom, I believe. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
He'll join us by Zoom here in just a moment. And I don't think here it is. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Ted Teague sent me another text with some newbies as far as things for you. These are 2023 cars. Dodge Durango, Hellcat Premium, AW, all-wheel drive, 710 horsepower, 645-foot torque, 6.2-liter supercharged V8 engine. This baby can go. $8,700 pounds of towing capacity, 8-speed, shiftable, automatic, all-wheel drive, nearly $9,100 off. 2023 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack, 6.4-liter engine, V8 engine, 485 horsepower. Last call, $7,000 off. And the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe, 4-wheel drive, 8-speed, shiftable, automatic, inline 4-cylinder, plug-in hybrid, $11,677 off. They're available right now. Go to the showroom, go to the dealership. Alan Samuels with Ted Teague, GE, the CEO and general manager, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, here we go. Phil Bennett will join us momentarily. Garrett, give me the thumbs up when we have Coach. I asked him about whether or not we could use the Zoom with him, and he said, yeah, I'm usually out of my outdoor kitchen. I'm really jealous of anybody that has an outdoor kitchen.
I want it. Look, you have no idea how bad I want one.
You got a huge backyard.
I have a huge backyard. I love to cook. My wife is the cleanest human being that has ever walked the face of this earth. Our sheets are hospital corners. The floors are immaculate. We vacuum.
Could you eat off the floors?
Yes. Yeah, okay. I would have no problem eating off the floor. Wear shoes off house. All of these things.
I learned that in Japan.
Yeah. I want an outdoor kitchen just so that I can cook outside where she won't freak out about the mess I will inevitably make because I don't have I know what was like now to practice with Michael Jordan. You know, players who played with Jordan would be like, man, he was just so hard on me in practice. And it's because he was so elite at it. My wife is elite at being clean. And because of that, I need to have my own outside playground because inside I'm not good enough to be inside. I'm and one compared to her, Michael Jordan.
You know, they said a lot of bad things about Michael Jordan. Called him a lot of bad words. Is that what you're saying about Amanda?
Yeah, she would as a lifelong Bulls fan who was born in Chicago, she would absolutely love that analogy that she's the Michael Jordan of clean.
Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, of course, a great friend of the show. A lot of stories today we can get to with him. The Pitt AD, the win by Texas in Ann Arbor, SMU goes up in Smoak on Friday against BYU, and so much. We were talking about how you said that normally when you're on with us, you're in your outdoor kitchen, which I'm so jealous of that.
Well, you know, I'm actually by my pool right now. I thought it'd be a little bit better view.
It is nice. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful view. Thank you for being a part of it.
I've got a backyard that people would die for. The whole, you can see the drop off. I've got almost 2 acres back there.
Wow. Yeah, I'd spend a lot of my time out there too. It's great to have you. Great to see you too, buddy. We appreciate your time. So let's go over a couple of things. Let's start with, you mentioned Texas and Michigan. We'll get to that game. They did exactly what we kind of expected. Not everybody, but they were just so much better than the Wolverines.
I think people forget how much Michigan lost last year. I think they were the team that had the most draft choices. They lost a culture leader that they really believed in. They lost a first-round pick at quarterback. You know, my question is, that's a long drop-off from a first-round pick to a former walk-on. Now, I thought the kid, maybe the kid's going to be a great player. But Texas played them very much at the right time. And I think Texas went in and did what they had to do. I do feel that Michigan might have a rough season. Now I don't think the Big Ten, looking at Wisconsin, looking at other teams, but it could be a rough year for them.
Coach, what were your thoughts on how badly Tennessee destroyed NC State? That was our other ranked matchup. Nicole Auerbach looks great. Sampson, the running back, looked really, really good. And NC State, a team that I thought, with Dave Doran, he coaches with some intensity and some moxie. They never got to the game. They were just never in it from the jump.
Dave is one of the better coaches around right now. I think he is doing more with less. With what they've done. He's really a good coach. Tony Gibson, his defensive coordinator, has had great stats. I was a little bit concerned because Tennessee always did, that they tried to simulate what Art did. Heupel, when he had Levy, went to that, really liked it. And when Tony was at West Virginia, Art would light him up. So I thought there's a lot of calls, a lot of things in his defense that if you're not tempoing, probably are really good. But I think he struggles with tempo. Last year in the bowl game against Kansas State, their young quarterback tempoed Tony and got him on edge. And I thought that's what this young kid at Tennessee did. I thought Tennessee looked really good. Their special team looked good. Everything about them looked good.
Coach, what is your feel for Oklahoma? They're very close to hitting the panic button based on just these first 2 weeks. Jackson Arnold, he's learning. He hasn't played a lot of football. Just what do you make? I mean, John Summerall and Tulane's going to give a lot of people hell, but what are your thoughts on the Sooners?
Two thoughts. First of all, they've got a very, very inexperienced offensive line. And as we saw in the Colorado-Nebraska game, the offensive line can make a big difference. I think that Jackson, I think they're very capable. I'm not sure they're as skilled as what they've been at receiver and running back. They really weren't able to run the ball. And that was a little bit surprising, especially against Houston, who struggled against UNLV. And I thought UNLV would have been a good tape for Oklahoma with their spread offense. But I do have confidence that Seth will get them going. And sometimes early on, it doesn't hurt that you have to play really good defense, to win a game. I don't want, whether you win or lose all the time, I think after one or two games, we make too many season deciding decisions on teams. You just got to see how they progress, how they take coaching, and how they rearrange things to get better.
Coach, you mentioned Nebraska, Colorado. Obviously we know Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule and what he's done. This is year 2, and they got beat up in Colorado last year. They had no chance, and he's done. This is kind of his MO in year 2. I got PTSD as a Nebraska fan for the last 10 years, but I was stunned at how easily they dominated that game on the line of scrimmage.
I thought Tony White defensively did an outstanding job. I think that when you can do that zero run game and you can pin, once you make them predictable, they were able to get those quick touchdowns. And I think what Matt does, I hate to use the word, but I think he's getting them into a groove of what he expects. I saw something he said before the game. We've prepared, we've talked about it. Now we've got to go do it. We've got to be doers and not talkers. That's the thing that caught me in that game. They didn't have a lot of showboating. I mean, there wasn't a lot of talking, but there was a lot of playing.
Colorado obviously has a problem being physical up front on both sides, Phil. That is something that 2 games in, obviously, like you said, we don't want to cast them out, but that is something now that's lasted for the last season and now into this one. How do you fix it in season? Do they have to consider radically changing what they do, especially on offense, just so that Shedeur Sanders can finish a game and finish this season?
I truly believe that I want to say, that they can change it, but from what I've seen in the first 2 games, it's going to be a struggle. I think they have some inexperience coaching the offensive line. Doesn't mean they're not good coaches. They have a pro coach that really doesn't have a college background that are calling the plays. I'm seeing a lot of what I saw when I left Arizona State. I'm seeing a personality as being the head coach, and I'm not seeing the things that show up on Saturday to help you win. There's a lot of verbiage. There's a lot of expectations, but I'm not sure we're going to see them have the year that they would like to have, and some people anticipated.
Coach, what is kind of the feel when you talk to other coaches if Deion gets brought up? Do people believe he's in it for the right reasons? Do people believe he's a good what's just kind of the talk with Deion ever comes up in coaching circles?
What I try to do is number one, I think Deion's an awesome person. He's been an unbelievable ambassador for football. I think he has good thoughts. I think he means well. I think he's out of his realm right now. I think his staff is out of their realm. You know, he hired a pro coach on offense. He hired a pro coach on defense. I don't see people that have been in the environment that they're in right now. And I think experience is important. I think there's good intentions. I think there's probably too much talking and not enough doing. That's just me. And I'm saying that with thinking that he's going to try to get it right. I just don't know if he can.
You know, that was one of the games in Nebraska. The second half it got sloppy, but that's a big win for them. What were your thoughts about We had Coach Hammock, Thomas Hammock, on the show from Northern Illinois. He's an alum from there, has a pretty nice resume, coached in the NFL with the Ravens. How about the Huskies and what they did to the Irish?
You know, I think a lot of people, I think everybody was shocked, but when they left College Station, it was obvious that they were not I didn't see them as being a playoff type team. I didn't think that offensively, their offensive line is young. And it was, I don't like the term trap game, but it was a game Northern Illinois had nothing to lose. You know, and I will tell you, I remember when Charlie Weiss was there, I was at Pitt, we went in and beat them in 4 or 5 overtimes in a game that they were supposed to win. I just think that Northern Illinois, you know, and I'll tell you something, they had to overcome the officials too. There was some questionable calls on that last drive on spotting the ball.
Oh, yeah.
What a heck of a win. And I think that, as Coach said, they believed, and it was obvious they got down to it. Now, I think Coach Freeman's a good coach. I think he's got a good quarterback. They're a team that has gone on the road, won on the road, and I think they're the type of team that can recover from this. I don't know if they'll be in the playoff picture, but they have a good schedule.
All right, Phil, I'm going to hire you to my team this week, and we're playing Boise State, and the only thing I need you to do is draw up a defense that's going to stop Ashton Genty. What do you got for me?
Let me tell you something. I played him the last game I coached. I didn't do a very good job. You know, but we did stop him the last 3 possessions and have a chance to win it. But for some reason, they quit running him. He's really a good player. The thing that I remember when watching him from when we were scouting is he makes his cuts at full speed. I mean, there's no squatting. There's no stopping. I mean, he makes those cuts. And I will tell you something. There were plays Saturday night that he made on his own. Nobody was blocked, and they couldn't tackle him.
Phil Bennett, former and been everywhere. By the way, we have a couple of Kansas State fans, more than just a couple, that watch this show, and there's that chat room, and they always say they appreciate you so much for your time and what you did at Kansas State with Coach Snyder.
Well, let me tell you something. I will forever love Kansas State for what we went through, what they did for me, my children, and my family. Just absolutely love everything about him, of course. And Coach Snyder is the best of the best.
Yep, no question. What he did twice is remarkable. The Pittsburgh AD was fired today. Been there since, I think, 2017, was voted by NADA as the athletic director of the year. Seemed like a lot of people liked what she had done. You were there.
Yeah.
What did you think when you heard that story?
You know, it's like one of the things in this business is you want to be wanted. I think Heather was involved with some jobs recently, Northwestern, that came down. She supposedly, one of my friends who's in the media there said that her people leaked it. They have a new woman chancellor that they sort of butted heads. One of the things that's behind the scenes, Smokey, is they built an event center they have a beautiful basketball arena on campus called the Peterson Center. And they built an event center with offices for volleyball, women's basketball, wrestling, and it was $240 million. And there's a big note on it. And I don't think the fundraising has been up to par. They had a new chancellor come in, looked at the books, didn't like what she was seeing. And then Heather was involved in a couple of jobs, according to my friend. And he said, I'm going to help her. If she needs to get a job, we're gonna make this one available.
Good. That's good to know. And I heard about a lot of respect, but yeah, you never know. And as a coach, you know that if a new AD comes in, or even in high school, if a superintendent or the principal changes, you don't know what's going to happen with the coaching staff.
Everything changes. And in defense of her, I read, this friend of mine wrote the article, but he said at the time she came there, she really did a good job. They needed some consistency, a lot of good things. She did a lot of good things. But as we all know right now, one of the things with the NILs and what's happening, this $25 million bill that they're fixing to have to pay, if you're not raising funds, then you become, a non-negotiable person at that position.
Yeah, we've seen that at Houston. Houston's AD,
there you go.
wasn't
With
fundraising, and Chris Pesman got put out so they could bring in somebody they could fundraise. Coach, you mentioned Arizona State. Did you get eyes on Arizona State, Mississippi State?
I watched the whole game.
Okay. What are your thoughts on just what Kenny Dillingham's done? And also, I know Jeff's got, it's 2 games into his tenure. There's some work to do there, obviously, with Blake Shapen and company.
I thought that Arizona State defensively did a really good job of keeping things in front of them. I know the defensive coordinator there. He's very sound. And I thought Kenny, he knew that his quarterback was limited on his throwing, and their little running back kept him in the game. Obviously, that's one of the things I think that Art and I sort of text during the game. I think that the defensive coordinator at MSU has to learn to play with this offense. They weren't very sound versus the run. This kid, I think he rushed for almost 200 yards and really kept them in the game. I thought Chapin got better. He had the fumble that fumbled and scored that ended up being the difference, but I thought he got better. And I thought offensively they look like they have a chance. They've got to get better fitting the run on defense.
Well, your thoughts about Kenny Dillingham? He's an offensive mind. He was at Oregon. This was a team in Arizona State that a lot of people wondered how many games they would win. And that's a nice win. It's an SEC team. They're 2-0. And I know the game with Wyoming in the first week was not that big of a deal, but it's a win for a school that not supposed to win. Yeah,
absolutely. I think Kenny's done a good job. I think that the AD, they got the situation with the AD where he likes him. And like I said, Coach Ward on defense is doing a good job. And his he made I don't know if many people know this, but he made an offensive coordinator change after last year. And he hired the former UNLV coach, who I think is an outstanding coach, and he's done a really good job with that offense.
Did you watch any of Utah and Baylor?
I did. I watched it. The thing that struck me in that game, even when Utah had their quarterback, I didn't see many explosive players on either side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the statistics, I think Baylor had 280, 90 yards, and I don't think Utah had that much more. And when Cam went out, they sort of went stagnant. Obviously, I didn't think that Baylor's quarterback played to the level that he needs to. They ran the ball, I think, averaged 2.45 yards a carry. That's always hard. People don't realize what that does to your quarterback when you can't run the ball.
Well,
I think Utah's pretty good on defense. Not great. But I will tell you, Utah didn't look like a team at other positions, running back or receiver, that were going to be dominant either. I thought that Baylor at times showed signs of really having a chance to getting in the game after being down early.
Yeah, that could have gotten a way out of hand, like 38-10 or something like that, because of the strip sack and eventually the blocked field goal. And then Utah, when they needed to, was able to grind the clock out at the end. And even though they didn't score, they sucked the time off the clock.
Well, and they had that. I think they had 6-7 more minutes of ball time than what Baylor had.
You mentioned the quarterback play. Finn was at Toledo, dynamic player. We've seen parts of that. Was that at times him being a little overwhelmed in that setting, or was it something else?
Well, I think that Utah was sound in what they did. I thought that, I didn't think Baylor's protection was terrible. I thought some of his throws, he looks like, and I watched him a year ago at Toledo. I'm not sure how accurate he is.
Yeah.
And when you're not having throwing and catching, timing issues, one time he had a wide open receiver and he underthrew the ball. And I think that a lot of things could have taken place, but first game, he looked a little bit rattled from the get-go.
Yeah, and that's a tough place, 50-some thousand, but that place is crazy. Now
they're right on top of you.
Yeah,
I mean, I've played there. They're right on top of you, and they're really good fans. You're exactly right.
All right, Phil, I talked to you on Friday, the SMU story with Dave Wilson about, here come all the billionaires, about SMU coming back from the dead, which is exactly what they've done. You were there. You were there when it was going to be a hard time to win. You mentioned to me that some people were actually making the decisions for the athletic department, like a council or whatever. So it wasn't easy for you. But go ahead and explain what you dealt with.
And listen, I say this with all honesty. I knew, it was a job I thought I could overcome. I had some people. We were trying to change things. But they had what they call the faculty senate. They weren't bad people. They were good people, but we were in such a mode of beating ourselves up. We didn't want to forgive ourselves over this SMU thing that happened, the death penalty. And so we wanted to, let everybody know, we're not letting this kid in school. That's, if you didn't have a 3.2, 1100 or something you weren't getting in school. And if I got 2 transfers in school, and both of them were 4.0 students, and that's the only way. It was just it was a job that I loved the president, but he was also, his hands were harnessed. And then finally, after my term, we'd gone through Rossley, Mike Cavan, who didn't have a chance either. And then I thought we were going to get there because we went 5 and 6. We started climbing, and then we had some things. They changed a couple of things. The other issue is your academic programs. There was no college of education. Is where you put the kids. And they finally, after me, when they hired June, they opened the gates. And, June was able to get transfers, get anybody in school. He started recruiting Dallas. And it became a better job. And then, of course, what's happened now, it's full go, and I think they can be relevant. Now, they didn't play good the other night, but I think that I think Rhett's a good coach, and I think they can get their feet going there.
All right, I want to let you tell the story. You and Jacob Green and a couple of friends of yours that went down to Houston to play an unbelievable course. Blue Jack, you told me that you basically hit every fairway, which is 14 of them, I would think, par 4s and 5s. Yeah, and you were playing very well, and you didn't shoot a very good score.
I was right under 100. Hey, the greens, I had a couple of putts. I had one birdie putt I told you about. Jacob Green still making fun of me. It was probably 8 feet, and I went 15 feet past it.
When did your career with Jacob overlap at A&M?
I was 2 or 3 years older than Jacob. My senior year, I was the right defensive end. He was the left defensive end. Heck of a player. Heck of a guy.
Okay, how many, because he was so good. I mean, and you had this great long NFL career as well with the Seahawks. How much easier does your job get on the right when he's on the left? Then all of a sudden you think, man, I'm feasting today.
You know what we used to laugh about? Jacob brought it up the other day. Coach Slocum was our position coach.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he goes, you know, Phil, I used to love it. We'd be in the end zone of Kyle Field. It'd be so hot. I mean, hot. And back then, you know, you tackled every practice. And he goes, everybody'd be after you. Ask Coach Slocum a question. Ask Coach Slocum a question. He said, we always knew you were going to be a coach because you asked the good questions and give us a 15-minute break because Coach Slocum would take so long to answer.
That's awesome. Hey, by the way, that Blue Jack Nationals Tiger, right? He's involved in that.
I'm not sure he is now, but I'm telling you, Smoak, some of the ovulations of the greens, I mean, we're sitting, all of us, we're sitting right there, you know, right there, and I'm a chip up, and I'm telling you, I think I started off 3 double bogeys right in a row, and hitting the ball and not losing balls. I mean, I'm used to Miramont. Hell, I'll lose the ball and get a double bogey, but this place down there is it's a beautiful course.
All right. Hey, thanks for the video look today, and
we'll be over. We got an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half to you, Phil. We'll be over.
We're headed down Highway 6. We'll be down there. Beautiful, beautiful view. Beautiful backyard. Enjoy it. I know you do. And thanks for your time today, my man, and have a great week.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Phil Bennett with us on 365 Sports, 2 acres. And that's down off the big drop off from where he was. Great to have him on today's show.
Pool, outdoor kitchen.
Yeah,
that's what. Look,
yeah.
I would rarely come inside because you can put TVs outside.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit cooler, but then you could even find ways
to. You can heat the pool or I mean, you know, I can't have a grotto because you know that's over in my life. You know, I always wanted that like heft, but you know that period of my life is over.
Yeah, the grotto would have been really cool. They've totally redone the mansion now. By the way, like I think it was part ownership of the family, and then like some other millionaire bought it, and they've been redoing it for like 2 years. So I don't think the grotto's even there anymore. But you can imagine. I think I read an article that place needed like a deep cleaning, as you might think. So probably good to just burn it all down and build it back up.
Do not put a black light in the play-by mansion.
No. But I think that was part of it. They totally redid it. Like I don't even think it looks all that much the same now at this point. But yeah, I got to drive by it one time, which was cool, just to say that I did. You know, at a point when Playboy was still like relevant too. So that was like, and Hef was still living there. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, beyond that, I also enjoyed his talk on football. And I thought, you know, if you're a Mississippi State fan, there was some interesting stuff there in terms of the offense. I mean, the defense that they're running paired with that offense of Jeff Lebby's. I think there was some interesting stuff on a lot of different Oklahoma and what they're facing right now. Just good stuff on a lot of different storylines, and that's a fun segment to get his thoughts on, and Dion, his thoughts on Colorado and what's going on there. And I thought he said that as politely as he could without making that like a viral quote on what he was going to say. I think he summed it up pretty well of just like kind of over his skis. And that's the thought right now with Colorado, and not even entirely Dion's fault, although it is his decisions ultimately that lead to what that staff looks like. But yeah, just a good grab bag of topics there.
All right. Great to have Phil Bennett with so many, from the Pittsburgh story, which is today, to the games that some of them that we look back on and reflected on, and then and what some of them also meant, and then the coaching perspective of what he saw with certain teams that struggled or what they were able to do.
It's just crazy that like how many dots he can connect, like from Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State to Seth Luttrell at Oklahoma. He was at Oklahoma. You know, go to A&M. You can go to Baylor, you can go to, all over the place. And if he didn't coach there and he's got a connection or somebody that he knows there, that's what makes that a really fun segment is that level of insight is not just, something you get anywhere. So that's cool.
Yep, absolutely. We appreciate that. And thanks to Phil Bennett, Emery Winter is working on 365 Sports tonight on the local CW every weeknight at 10:30. I got a feeling there'll be a segment or two with Coach Bennett. And again, if you haven't, please hit the like and subscribe button if you don't mind. From LFG, he was talking about Phil when he was at Arizona State. That's where my father got his degree, his master's. He was a Naval Academy graduate, but he got his master's at ASU back when they had Charlie Taylor was the All-American running back wide receiver for the Sun Devils. I loved my time in Tempe when I was younger.
Speaking of Playboy, Arizona State always had a pretty good representation when they do their Pac-12 or whatever it was back in the day.
Hey, they've got views at Arizona State. They've got some beautiful
Arizona
views.
State ranks near the top and
probably top 5.
Yeah, but Playboy was actually one of those that did the top 5 college campuses and that that everybody just took and made, Barstool or whatever did. That was all Playboy originally.
I went to one. So I know.
Florida State, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We were routinely in
I think Arizona State and Florida State are the same schools, just different areas.
When I was walking, we were there 2 years ago when I was walking around campus. I was like, throw a little more greenery on this campus and I'll even feel like home.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Did you ever? I read the article. Playboy has some great articles.
Hunter S. Thompson used to write for them. I know that's the cliche and the joke, but they didn't make it that far on tit picks alone. They really, they had some quality journalists writing for them for a long time. That's
the joke, but it's actually true. That's the thing about it is if it's actually true, they really did have great articles in that magazine. I know because my roommate for a while subscribed and we got them when we were in our early 20s. So perfect timing. Right. And yeah, you actually sit there and it's been on the coffee table for 10 months and you've seen all the pictures and you look at the articles or whatever when you first get it and they actually were really good. But I know that's not why it was popular. I always find it funny when people that bring that up as a joke because it's actually true. The articles really were good. I just don't believe that. Yeah, that's why most people were grabbing the magazine.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks to Phil Bennett. Around the corner, we got a couple of more stories to get to. In fact, with the new top 25 out and another week of results, what does that mean if, in fact, they were to go to the college football playoff bracket this early, which, of course, we know that's still 3 months down the road or so. A few other stories in college football. We will do that. This is 365 Sports. Friday morning, early on, I went to Ideal MRI to get an MRI on my lower back, my lumbar, and then also on my hip, my right hip. I've told the story. It's really bothered me more than I sometimes have even said, but at times I'm just tired of it. I'm absolutely just fed up with it. I don't know what it is. I had an injection earlier in the year that helped for a month or two. It just basically was like putting a Band-Aid on what is kind of a numbing type pain. And I'm just fed up. So I got Dr. Ackley at Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine, to send in a request. I went to the MRI. I arrived there, and you know how I'm a little bit spooked by claustrophobic, tight things around me. And I went in there, and it was the first session was 25 minutes. And as she was rolling me out, she said, "Would you mind going in head first this time for about 10 minutes? We have a camera that I want to get a better angle of a certain part." And I was like, okay. And it was nothing. No big deal. I was relaxed. They make you feel that way. The techs, the specialists, who are the ones that get when you walk in the door and you change into the robe and you get on that machine. And there's been a couple of times when I've done an MRI where I was spooked. They are fabulous at what they do. The equipment, state-of-the-art imaging machine, and $497 or less every single time. The average is $1,100 at idealmri.com in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Midway Athletics and UBO Business Services are two names that exude winning. From Midway's top Central Texas Star test scores to college-like extracurricular facilities and UBO Business Services industry-leading customer service scores, you can trust in these two winning programs. Best of luck to Coach Joe Gillespie and the Midway Panthers. And look at your sticker on your office equipment. If it does not say UBO, call Midway Class of 2020, Duff, Daxon, Dane, or Sean Hunt at 254-709-2101 or ubeo.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry, go through your wife's jewelry box, go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Special thanks to Josh Young and the people at KWTX. We had a power outage at our building early Saturday morning. Paul got the encore alert. We told the general manager, Josh Young, we ended up doing the show Saturday morning from their television station, and it was like fun. We enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace, and their staff did a great job of getting us on the air on time with all of what we needed.
There are four, because I want the gigantic green screen area. I would like to be our meteorologist because I feel like I could get it close. But I loved tech knowledge, but the IFB is something we've always wanted.
Yep.
And it's great to have.
Where you have something in your earpiece and you can hear from the producer who's telling you a couple of things.
Yeah, I do apologize for putting my mic on wrong, apparently, I guess, because they had to fix that. Yeah. I couldn't tell. I didn't know what I was doing. So lesson learned there, I guess. But it was
a really small, most our lav mics that we use, it's you could tell. You can look at it. There's little microscopic, little tiny thing.
Yeah,
you can barely see
those
it.
things used to be so bulky when I started.
It was unbelievable. And then Garrett loved it because he was in the control room away from us, which is where he'd rather be.
Yeah.
So,
I think we need to have some sort of a glass or plastic, hard plastic container where we see him, but we don't hear from him, and he tells us things in our ear.
I think he agrees with that.
Yeah. Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy saying that one of their best players, defensive players, Colin Oliver, out for the year with an injury he suffered in the game against Arkansas. Craig, how good a player is he? Was on a lot of the preseason teams.
Yeah, he was. He's a good player. I don't want to overstate it, but yeah, it's a definite loss for Mike Gundy and company. And the good news is that they were able to navigate that and move on. It's not a situation, though, where you necessarily have the depth that some of the other top programs have, right? And I think he kind of mentioned that, but young man's name's escaping me who replaced him. I'll have to look at it.
His name's Obi Ozigbo.
Yes, so he was thrust into action, and he'll be one of the main guys that is filling in for Colin Oliver. But, yeah, Colin Oliver's a guy that's been around for a while, good player. You mentioned he's a lot of the preseason lists, and that's just really unfortunate, just period, that, your season cut short less than 2 games into it. So I don't think it's debilitating for them. I do need to just look probably into it further to see what all this actually means for them, big picture. But, I thought that they managed that pretty well given the unfortunate nature of, anybody getting hurt, much less a guy who's been a big contributor and somebody who's obviously got, some something to him,
Yeah. All right. So here's Mike Gundy today when asked about D2 transfer from Gannon University, Obi Ozigbo, stepping in for linebacker Colin Oliver.
Oh yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Do you want me to go back into coach talk, or do you want the truth? He was very inexpensive. The number of players that we go after that were ready to play at this level, we can't afford.
I think that's a two-level thing. One,
he's rattling the cages.
He's rattling the cages. This is a technique I like to call the Nick Saban, where you go and be like, I don't know. I mean, ain't it spending all this NIL money? I don't know if we have it here in Alabama. And Oklahoma State actually has a better argument than Alabama does. But you do rattle the cages a little bit and get people involved in the collective a little bit more. And I don't think he's lying that he's saying that they're not going after those players because of that. But I do think it's a bit of a like, hey, do you want us to not have to go to Gannon? Do you want us to be able to go to maybe, Arizona or Florida or wherever that there's a transfer available and get that guy? Then, buck up a little bit. So,
yeah. Well, I love Gundy's.
He snipes a lot, and it's always fun. And, just to hear him when he goes off the rails, which is like once a week or something, he just says something that's worth like the 20 minutes that you spent listening to the presser. You're like, okay, yeah, that was all worth it. But they're a team that's looked okay through 2 weeks. Nothing more. I don't change my thoughts on like where they are in terms of number 2 or number 3 in the Big 12 right now. I think that they're still very much in that space, but I don't think they have a huge lead on 4 through 8 or whatever. And I don't think that there's a giant gap between 1 and 2 or 3. The Rising injury is the thing that's the most interesting story, I think, in the Big 12 coming out of this week in terms of just like what could matter the most moving forward, because they are a completely different team without Cam Rising at quarterback. So that is something to monitor, even though it turned out to not likely be that serious. But I hate that for Oklahoma State. I hate that for such a great player. I don't know how much it impacts their defense, like I said, just big picture, because it's not like it was a dominant defense to begin with. And it's not like it all hinged around him. So I think they were kind of in a situation where they're still figuring some things out on that side. And I don't know how much more of a problem this presents for them. But guy who played a lot of ball, was very, very good, ranked highly in a lot of like just career type stuff. And that sucks, man. That sucks. I hate that for them. And I hate to see any team in the league who's one of the top teams, like I'm talking about with Rising, have the types of injuries that could derail what could be a playoff run or a run to the championship game. I know that comes with the territory. That's going to happen in every league, but there were a couple of instances this weekend where you're like, oh, damn, like that could matter long term.
All right. Oklahoma State and K-State, that could have been an absolutely disastrous weekend for the conference had they not pulled those out. And we mentioned it was dicey. Now, because of the latest AP rankings, we are now past week 2.5, what the college football playoff would look like based on who would be projected to win their conference. They have Georgia at 1, which means they feel like that they will win the SEC against Texas, who's right there at 5. So you have Georgia, Ohio State, Miami, Utah, the top-rated conference, what will be projected as champions. Then Tennessee, Missouri, SEC, NIU with the win against Notre Dame against Texas, Penn State, Ole Miss, and then Oregon, Alabama. So there are 6 teams out of the 12 right now based on where we are with the SEC.
Yep.
Well, man, we just said earlier, it's 4 of the top 5 and 5 of the top 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's,
and they're going to like bounce around each other because they're going to play each other, beat each other, lose a game, then beat somebody else in the top 10.
Do you think that Greg Sankey woke up Sunday morning and was like, my plan is working?
Yeah.
Because it is.
Yeah. So. His plan, his teams are also at least up until 2 weeks are taking care of their
business. I don't want to give him that much credit that he's like pulling all the strings, even though he clearly pulls some of them. But I do think that, this is probably going to be similar to what it looks like at the end of the year. We can bitch and moan about the rankings and how they're massaged and things like that. But based on the first couple weeks of the season, who you taking out?
Oh,
who looks better? Yeah. So I think that's going to get boring, honestly. And who knows? We'll see. I mean, it's the first year of the 12 team. We got to see how it goes. But I think like the default, 8 of the 12 every year from the same 2 leagues. I'm already getting bored of that idea, and we haven't even done it one time yet.
Yeah, let's experience it first.
So we'll see. But I don't know that they deserve that much benefit of the doubt. But early on, through 2 weeks, this is what it should shape up to look like, and we'll see what it's like in another 10.
Let's let it play out. And then, by the way, the other conferences who are the ones who kind of get left behind, and in this case, even a little bit Big Ten, go win some big games. Go win some games in the ACC and Big 12, and some of them did, some of them did not. So there we are with that. Do you have the Sean Keeler tweet that we go to Paul's top 5? I'm not sure you do. Yeah. We got to show this one because it's timely, and Paul's the one who sent this to me because he and Sean are good buddies. Here it is.
Yeah.
He had one of the responses was, you had this in your holster after the cat fight with Colorado and also with Deion. Nebraska, Colorado wasn't just a game. It was a referendum on Coach Prime method, and told the country that Deion Sanders still aren't ready for prime time in a column. And I haven't read the column. I'm sure I will. But obviously, Sean was in the news because of some of the stuff he's written about Deion.
It's exactly what you expect. I mean, it's what you'd expect. And look, he's not wrong right now. And the thing that Deion and Colorado have to do is they have to change those things so that they can legitimately say, this is why we don't let you ask questions, which I still think is soft.
Very.
And those things though are the things that kill you from the outside, because you already have enough problems inside with you can't block, you can't tackle, you get out physical all the time. I mean, that's something you have to fix inside. But what you can control outside is how much noise you let in or do that. Well, Deion invites a lot of noise in just by his bombastic personality. Some of that earned, some of that not. Like Craig talked about how much of it is really not, and it's just because people decide that they don't like him.
There's plenty that's worthy of criticism, especially this weekend. But don't make up stuff about the song.
And Colorado had to respond to that,
right? But it wasn't totally true, and that was my whole thing. Was okay, we don't have to do that. We got plenty of evidence on the field from Saturday to criticize that this program's not going in the right direction. We don't need to make up stuff to make it more than it is.
The true stuff is good enough. The true stuff is good enough. But then when you say, well, I don't want you asking questions, and this and that, then that means that you've let it get to you, which once you've let it get to you, then the outside noise
that's when he'll say something like, well, this is so below me, and I just don't listen. And it's the whole time you're like, okay, whatever.
No,
yeah, sure,
absolutely.
whatever.
When you make that decision about silencing a reporter, then it does get to you.
I know, but he always plays the I'm so above it all card because he's Deion, the NFL legend, and all of that. So we don't get it. We're not high enough in the airspace to understand because we haven't lived that life. You know what I mean? That's kind of how he always presents everything. Of we're not with it enough to understand what being in his airspace is like, and that's the part that can rub a lot of people the wrong way, because it's a cop out to any criticism, and it's a cop out to a lot of things in some cases. But I defended him earlier in this show, so I'm not all anti Deion, but they do in some cases bring it on themselves, and especially with a performance like on Saturday when you don't live up to the talk and you don't walk the walk in any way, shape, or form. Then you're going to open yourself up to a lot of criticism.
Well, he responded to the report about the school song and all that by just responding to the person who posted it up on their Twitter page, bro, come on, or something like that. So somebody alerted him and he said it and responded. And Colorado did with a statement. What they do is if he scores, there's a quick blip, small,
of his song,
short blip of his song, and they go straight into the fight song and school song, whatever else.
Yeah, the story said they're not playing the fight song so that they can play Shador's music. But
not
they also
playing the fight song at all.
They're not. That's what I'm saying. They don't play the fight song, which is not true. So that was the thing that everybody glommed onto right away. It's oh my God. And it's not even true. It's partially true if you want to really look at it that way, but it's not true. And the thing is, it's not just a Shador thing. They do that for all the players or some of the players. I don't know if everybody has that choice or whatever. Not everybody's in a position to score, but apparently it's not just a Shador thing. So again, that's also misleading. And you don't need to do that. There's enough right in front of your face to criticize. We don't need to make up stuff just to make Shador look like more of he did that on Saturday night when he walked off the field early. You criticize that or whatever, but I don't like the tabloid stuff.
One final thought from Utah and Baylor that was overlooked. I didn't realize this. I guess I did. Palmer Williams, the Baylor punter, had punts of 57, 60, 76, and 79 yards.
Well,
that's crazy.
He's good, and that altitude certainly helped too. That's
nuts. But I didn't. I knew one of them was 70+ yards. Let's kick it off. Those last two numbers.
I didn't even think about the altitude. Now that you mentioned that probably, I think Palmer Williams is also just a good punter, but Kyle Whittingham did say he was out kicking their coverage units, and Utah just never made him pay. So that's notable. That's why Kyle Whittingham's a great coach, because we're all sitting there oh my God, 79 yards. And then he looks at it and he goes, that's cool. But we should have ran it back for 6 because their guys were nowhere near the foot. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. By the time if they catch it, they're 20
there's
yards.
Nobody there. So
cushion.
He was upset that they didn't make them pay. So yeah, it's a cool stat and it's worthy of mentioning, but it's also something as you don't necessarily need to kick it 79 yards. You might need to make it 62 or something. So that's just something for Baylor special teams.
He won the special teams national award this week.
Yeah, because nobody's going to look into it that deeply. They're going to see those numbers, and rightfully so. He deserves it. But I'm just saying, from a football standpoint, I'd adhere to Kyle Whittingham's soundbite there of saying hey, that's all great, well and good, but we should have busted your ass for it, and we just did. We were unable to do that.
All right, we will come back tomorrow, but we're not done with today. Paul Catalina and his top 5.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. I hope you enjoyed week 2 more than the teams in this list did. It was rough for some of them. One of them did win, but the others didn't. Of course, thanks to our sponsor, TexasBeefHouse.com. Jack McKenzie was preparing his first wave of Wagyu beef this weekend. He told me about it in great detail. Caramelized onions, getting ready, the burgers ready to go. He was fired up about doing some smash burgers at his house. That great beef. Bid on Beef, I believe there's an auction this week. So go check it out. There's one this week, maybe next week. I don't know. Smokey's the Bid on Beef expert. But just go to bidonbeef.com and find out when the auctions are and get prepared to make your bids for whatever you want. Steaks, hamburgers, tons of different things that they have there at TexasBeefHouse.com, and use our promo code 365sports. Teams that need help post week 2. Number 5, Notre Dame. Their offense is not what it should be right now. Not even close. Mike Denbrock's not calling it to the strength, which I'm surprised because Mike Denbrock's one of the best offensive coordinators in football. Here's what he, I think, is trying to do. He's trying to run the offense that they ran with Jaden Daniels at LSU last year with Riley Leonard. Much like Mike Norvell was trying to run the Jordan Travis offense with DJU. Well, those are not the same people. I'm going to lean in a little closer and say it again. Those are not the same people. You have to adjust to your talent. If Mike Denbrock adjusts to the talent that he has on the team, runs the game through his tailback love, and lets Riley Leonard run a little bit more, run some more quarterback powers, quarterback options, play action off of that, Notre Dame should be fine. But Northern Illinois rolled in there and physically matched them step for step the whole way, and that should be very concerning to Irish fans on the way out. Number 4. Auburn. Hugh Freeze is supposed to be a QB guru, right? Well, this is 2 years now with Peyton Thorne, and the guru hasn't gotten the message that maybe Peyton Thorne is not an FBS-level quarterback, an SEC-level quarterback. He's probably not even totally a G5-level quarterback. I know that that's harsh to hear about a college kid, but Auburn fans right now all over the plains are agreeing with me. They need dynamic playmakers at quarterback. They have wide receivers that they have dynamic playmakers. They've got a pretty decent offensive line. But they've lost to Cal, a fan base who cares far less, and I'm not knocking you, Cal, but far less than Auburn fans do, because Auburn fans care about their team, and those boosters care about it to an unhealthy level. See the litany of fired coaches who couldn't live up to Big Brother Alabama. Auburn needs help in a big way right now, and Hugh Freeze was supposed to show some progress in year 2. That did not happen against Cal on Saturday. By the way, Jade Knott, total badass. Total badass at Cal. Number 3, Michigan. This is a cataclysmic fall-off from a national championship team a year ago. Look, Texas is a fantastic team. They're probably going to be in the playoff unless the wheels straight come off, but Texas had everything that Michigan had last year. They've got star leadership from the quarterback. They've got skill players. They've got badasses on defense, even though their defense quite not as good as it was last year, because you can't just repeat that, but they've replaced it ably so far early in the season and have not given up many points. A shutout to Colorado State and what probably felt like a shutout in Ann Arbor because it did not look good. And when you have to name the starting quarterback the day of the first game, which they did with Davis Warren, and Alex Orji hasn't worked out, you've got a problem. And maybe some of that outside noise has gotten into Michigan a little bit, and they're not feeling quite as confident as they were, and they weren't able to just bowl through it like they were last year. This team is awful on offense. Not to mention, their offensive line has taken a little bit of a step back, which I'm surprised about. And Donovan Edwards, who's one of the cover athletes of EA Sports College Football 25, has not been good. That's a shocker to me, and a shocker to a lot of people, particularly Sharon Moore and Donovan Edwards. Michigan in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. That team didn't just look like a team that got beat by a way better team in Texas. That team just didn't look like a team that can compete maybe as well as they think so in their own conference. But it's a long season. It was the second game, but 2 weeks in a row of ugly Michigan offense. This is not sustainable at the Big House. Number 2, Oklahoma. I don't know what's going on with the offense. I don't know what's going on with that offense. Jackson Arnold needs to be better than he was against Houston. Houston's a team you shouldn't have that many problems. Yeah, Nick Anderson was out, but that shouldn't affect you too much. Get the ball to Deion Burks more. I mean, Anderson and Burks, one of the better receiving duos, I think, in the SEC right now. Those guys are both really, really good. And if one of them is out, that means, okay, let's find Deion Burks more. Let's run the ball a little bit better. They didn't do anything well. Defensively, they held Houston in check. Houston only scored, 12 points or whatever. But offensively, they look a mess, and their schedule's not getting easier. It gets worse from here. So if you want to avoid this, you got to fix that offense in a hurry, Seth Luttrell. You got to. I have faith that he can do it. I think he's one of the better offensive minds, but clearly they got stuck in the mud the other day. Hopefully for Sooner fans, this is a 1 week blip. And who could number 1 be? Who could it be? Who had the most embarrassing indictment on their style of play and coaching plastered all over national television this week in prime time. It was tough to figure out which team in prime time had their whole style on display for everyone like me to criticize. Colorado. I don't. Just, if I'm going to answer this question here, I don't right now. I don't believe now. I still believe in Deion Sanders' potential as a head coach, but he's got to philosophically change what he's doing about building that roster. If he wants to protect his own flesh and blood in Shadir Sanders, that ship may have already sailed for this year. Now, granted, the best recruit they have is their left tackle, who came out of Florida and is there. But the transfer offensive lineman they have, not getting it done. Not getting it done. They're really bad in the offensive line. Now, part of that, I think, is talent. Part of it, I think, is scheme. I think they've got a scheme issue that is not helping Colorado be better than they could be. Sometimes you have to protect against things, and because they have Shadir Sanders and Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter and LaJonte Wester and Campbell, they have some really amazing wide receivers, and they have a great quarterback. I don't know if Dallin Hayden's any good at running back. I have no idea. Why do I have no idea? Because he can't go anywhere. I think he'd probably be pretty good if he had places to run. He doesn't. And Shadir Sanders is not going to make it through this season like he didn't make it through last season as they get in the Big 12 and the hits just keep on coming. Nebraska punished them physically and made them like it in the first half. I mean, pretty much throughout that game, but the first 2 quarters of that game were an absolute indictment on how Deion Sanders built that roster and how they thought they could get by with mediocre offensive linemen, or they just completely whiffed on talent evaluation. But if Shadir is going to be upright and be healthy and not have to miss workouts going into the draft this year, you've got to figure out better ways to protect him and not put the game solely on his shoulders. I don't believe yet, Deion. I don't believe yet. But I believe in you. I just don't believe in what you're doing right now. You need to change. The sign of great coaches are the ones who adapt. Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time in college football, is the greatest coach of all time because he was the most adaptable coach of all time. Deion has to adapt. Adapt. Thank you for watching. We're wrapping it up right now.
All right, Seminole on Seminole crime. Paul's top 5.
Was, yeah.
And appreciate Texas Beef House. They have, again, an auction this Wednesday, Thursday. The next Wednesday, Thursday, they are going live auction a lot on TexasBeefHouse.com. All right, tomorrow, back at it. One of our guests is Ricky Thompson, former Baylor wide receiver, part of Baylor Radio, but also a part of that 74 Baylor Southwest Conference team that honored this weekend. We'll have him, John McClain on the passing of Carol Dawson, and more. Opening weekend of the NFL. Garrett Ross, thank you. Emery Winter, thank you. Jack McKenzie, thank you. Our sponsors and those of you today who watched us wherever it was, if it was on Twitter, if it was online on YouTube, or also the Sikkim 365 app. For Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. Thank you and have a great night.